is brewed, and I've got a steaming hot cup of it sitting right next to me here. I am going to read something to you. Actually, I'm going to read two things to you. But the first thing, where is it? Oh yeah, I posted it to Patreon. So here's my browser. Let's get a chat going here, which means I got to sign in. Oh, come on. Here, let me train your AI for you. Yes. There you go. Now you have a structured labeled data set. Oh, you need more, huh? Fuck off. Fuck off. Okay. Oh, really? Really? You need more, huh? You need more. Yep. Train the algorithms for what? Frickin' 5 minutes? How long do I have to do this shit? Cars. Bridges. This is absurd. Damn. All right. Refresh. Here we go again. Who says again? What accent is that? All right, now. So this is what I see when I log into Patreon. Hi, KMO. Hi, Patreon. How are you? All right. I plan to share and discuss this on today's live stream. I haven't read it yet. As usual, this will be a cold reading, which is common. It's the exact opposite of a cold day in hell. Although it's been cold as hell here this weekend, let me tell you. Radical Suburbs, Experimental Living on the Fringes of the American City by Amanda Colson Hurley. $17 for 160 pages. That's not a good deal. If forced to compare an ice cream flavor with suburbia, many would pick vanilla. Yeah, look at these cul-de-sacs. None of the beloved grid pattern, just, extolled by the new urbanists. Lots of little inefficient cul-de-sacs, but, great place for a kid to ride a bike down here at the end of one of these. When I lived in California in my elementary school years, I was there from kindergarten through the end of third grade. I lived on a cul-de-sac just like this. It was marvelous. Japanese green tea. Skip ads. Yeah, I know. Kiddies don't drink green tea, so why do they put green tea commercials in kiddie videos? That is just bilking the advertisers, and I'm okay with that, really. Is the United States a free country? Well, we certainly have consumer choice. If that's freedom, we got it. And I've got coffee. All right, here we go. The Good Life, Just Beyond. So, The Good Life, Just Beyond, a new book explores the evolution of American suburbia by, check it out, Joel Kotkin, author of The Coming Neo-Feudalism, a warning to the global middle class. All righty. Radical Suburb, Experimental Living on the Fringes of the American City by Amanda Colson Hurley, Belt Publishing, 160 pages, too much money. But maybe this review will give us all we need to hear from it. If forced to compare an ice cream flavor with suburbia, many would pick vanilla. Yet, as Amanda Colson Hurley writes in her new book, Radical Suburbs, Experimental Living on the Fringes of the American City, this is just one of many misinformed cliches about these peripheral communities. City dwellers internalized these attitudes early on. In the early 1950s, novelist Raymond Chandler spoke for many urbanites when he disdained suburban life for its 8-room house, 2 cars in the garage, chicken every Sunday, and the Reader's Digest on the living room table, the wife with a cast iron permanent, and me with a brain like a sack of Portland cement. "You take it, friend," he declared. "I'll take the big, sordid, dirty, crooked city." Distaste for suburbia persists, with new urbanist gurus like Andres Duane describing suburbanized cities, such as Phoenix, as places where civic life has almost ceased to exist, though he offers no real evidence to back up this assertion. Social critic James Howard Kunstler goes even further, suggesting that the state of the mega suburbs of recent decades have produced horrendous levels of alienation, anomie, anxiety, and depression. Yet, as Hurley fortunately reminds us, the suburbs actually have a long and, in many cases, quirky history. In her study of 6 suburban developments, she shows that these communities emerged outside cities not as unglamorous places generating profits, but as oases from urban stress with utopian goals. Ambridge, a Pittsburgh suburb dating to the 1820s, for example, was originally settled by the Harmony Society, a German religious sect that practiced celibacy. Though industrious, the society's adherents lacked offspring, which delivered the community's own death sentence, as Hurley wryly notes. In later decades, radical forms of communalism thrived beyond Pennsylvania's Butler County, with numerous early suburbs adopting communist or anarchist ideologies. Hurley tells the story of Stelton, a colony established near Piscataway, New Jersey, in 1915 by political radicals, and unlike Ambridge, teeming with children. Stelton's population typically ranged from 150 residents in winter to more than 300 by the summer. Its location, not far from New York City, provided easy access to commuter trains. Residents would leave their socialist paradise to earn a living in capitalist Manhattan. Ideology aside, Stelton's residents exemplified a continuing suburban aspiration, mixing rural peace with opportunities in the big city. Hurley also addresses the broader history of suburban living. Many factors drove the desire to escape city life: cost, space, a yearning for privacy, and a widening societal divergence between the urban center and its periphery. By the New Deal era, families flocked to suburban Greenbelt towns, which drew their inspiration in part from the Garden City movement founded by British visionary Ebenezer Howard. The concept, which produced communities like the federally planned and financed Greenbelt, Maryland, outside Washington, focused on rental housing for government workers. But the movement ultimately failed, with private contractors lobbying against the construction of federally built suburbs. Though radical in conception, Greenbelt sadly reflected the cultural mores of the period, for example, by discriminating against African Americans. Yet today, blacks constitute the majority of Greenbelt's 24,000 residents. Hurley's focus on unusual suburbs like Greenbelt, though fascinating, overlooks more relevant contemporary concerns. Suburbia's demographic composition, for example, is radically changing. Despite the 2010s, I should say, during the 2010s, the percentage of suburbanites living in predominantly white suburbs fell from 51% to 39% in the 50 largest U.S. metropolitan areas. 44% of residents live in radically and ethnically diverse suburbs, ranging from 20% to 60% non-white. Hurley also misses pragmatic reasons for relocating to suburbs: good schools, safety, privacy, which help explain why places like Reston, Virginia have become more expensive, with many homes costing over $1 million. The combination of smart design, suburban amenities, and a thriving town center are fueling these rising costs. America's continued attachment to home ownership contributes to suburbia's growth. In cities, roughly 40% of residents own their homes, but in older suburbs, owners constitute 3/5 of residents. In newer suburbs and exurbs, more than 7 in 10 residents own homes. A 2012 study by Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies found little evidence to suggest individuals' preferences for owning versus renting a home have been fundamentally altered by their exposure to house price declines and loan delinquency rates, or by knowing others in their neighborhood who have defaulted on their mortgages. In a 2013 University of Connecticut survey, 76% of those polled believed that home ownership remained necessary to be considered middle class. Radical Suburbs is more interested in the past than the future. Contemporary demographic and economic statistics are missing from Hurley's analysis. She repeats the conventional wisdom that people still prefer core cities, even as suburbs and exurbs continue to grow faster. Similarly, she celebrates corporations' urban resurgence, when most new jobs have been growing in the periphery, particularly in the Sun Belt. Hurley's interest in unusual suburbs also obscures the legacy of more conventional ones. The Levitts and the builders of Southern California's Lakewood, for example, created suburban homes for millions of middle and working class people, neighborhoods that possessed drawbacks, including poor aesthetics and racial discrimination, but that also delivered the promise of upward mobility and financial security to millions. Intended as a nationwide study, Radical Suburbs skews to the East Coast. Though the Eastern Seaboard is more historic and has seen innovative development, the residential and corporate migration patterns of the past 30 years have shifted to the West and the South. Hurley's book would have benefited from chapters on suburbs more like Houston's Woodlands, Fort Bend, and Cinco Ranch, Irvine in California's Orange County, and Valencia, north of Los Angeles. These newer communities, with a mix of good housing, ethnic diversity, and business infrastructure, are reshaping American life and pointing the way toward a more sustainable future. Their story may not be as interesting as those of colonies of celibates, anarchists, and social democratic dreamers, but they are more likely bellwethers of how many of us will live tomorrow. Of how many of us will live tomorrow. Not how many of us will live tomorrow, but how many of us will live tomorrow. Let's read that last sentence again. Their story may not be as interesting as those of colonies of celibates, anarchists, and social democratic dreamers, but they are more likely bellwethers of how many of us will live tomorrow. Joel Kotkin is the Presidential Fellow in Urban Futures at Chapman University and Executive Director of the Center for Opportunity Urbanism. His latest book is The Human City, Urbanism for the Rest of Us. Well, no, his most recent book is The Coming of Neo-Feudalism. All right. Here, I will post a link to this in the chat. I can see there's already a comment in the chat. Let's see. Let's move the chat to the far right. That's where I'm used to looking for it. Come on. You got it. All right. Now it's its own browser. Here's the link. So, Benarubber. Yes, laughing my ass off. Putting in your public service for AI training that will be privatized. Exactly. But you know, it used to be said, I think it was Jaron Lanier who famously put this, if you're not paying for the service, you're not the customer, you're the product. Well, the other formulation was you either bring money or you bring data, or you train the AI. Alrighty. Let's see if I can reattach this to this other. Come on, what's happening? Google, you're messing with me here. Hey, Parker. Sorry I didn't see your chats the other day. All right, here's what we're going to do. Let's close all of that stuff. Don't know why I feel the need to keep it clean. I'll close all that too. What the heck? There, I just have one browser tab open. First time in weeks, probably. Except I have two laptops. Oh, this is a song that is copyrighted, and I may not... Copyrighted, I suppose. I can't play it. Yeah, well, you're not even watching the birds and squirrels. I'm going to turn it off, or I'm going to mute it like that. Meow. Alrighty. I do need to draw today. Oh, I was going to read something else. What was it? I've just closed it. What was it? I forgot. Oh well. Oh, the memory. So half for financial reasons and just half for my probably misguided attempt to cultivate mental clarity. I did not re-up when I ran out of weed. I'm about a week into not smoking weed in the evenings. Hey, Dryland Fish. Oh, it's not a lawsuit minefield, but if I get 3 copyright strikes, my channel gets destroyed, which means all the content that I've archived here is no longer available to me. Or you. All right. I really do need to start drawing pretty soon, but if anybody has something you want me to read. Actually, Ben Rubber, you sent me something the other day that had lots of different things to read in it. I read some of them. I mean, I read, I think, just one thing here on the live stream, but I read several others on my own. So, open Gmail. Oh, here's a comment on Patreon. Ben Rubber writes, looking forward to it. Wondering how much of it will or won't fit into the Wizard and the Prophet profiles. I have a couple articles in the chamber for when you try to be productive. One by George Friedman and one that Charles Mann tweeted about by Emily Mortimer. Well, you know, I'm going to go to the Emily Mortimer one. And let's see. Let me check the chat. I feel like I get mental horsepower boost after abstaining for 3 days. You know, all I ever get from it is unpleasantly intense dreams. Alrighty. Like last night, I dreamed I was back in Seattle, and I haven't been in Seattle since 2010, January of 2010. In fact, Jim, your ad attacker, and Neil Kramer and I, we had lunch at the Two Bells Tavern in downtown Seattle, just like 4 or 5 blocks from where I used to live. And in my dream last night, I was trying to find my old apartment. And I was on the city streets of Seattle, and certain things were familiar and other things were confusing, and I was just disoriented, and I couldn't find my old apartment. And then I finally found where my old apartment should be, but like the place where my door should have been, the building ended and a new building started, and the next door apartment, somehow I knew that Black Beauty, the podcaster who used to do, BB's Bungalow on the Dope Fiend Network, I knew that she was in the apartment next door, and so I knocked on her door. And I could see that the peephole darkened, like she was looking out, and then she backed away and didn't say anything and didn't open the door. I was like, what? Anyway, other people's dreams are boring to listen to, so I'll stop. Ben Rubber says, I ran out of weed over a year ago. Haven't had good weed in so long I stopped trying. Oh, wow, I get great weed around here. And it's pretty cheap now. I mean, it's expensive at the legal weed store down in Massachusetts, but just the black market stuff has never been better, and the price just keeps falling. And I'm not smoking it. It's totally legal for me to smoke it now, and I'm not. Okay. I thought there was some Kunstler-Kotkin feud in there. Understandable that Kunstler and him don't jive. Kotkin said the suburbs could be sustainable. Kotkin also is... he's like me in that he's pretty enthusiastic about the current advances in space exploration. I was just before the live stream started, I was editing something that I recorded today for the next Sea Realm Vault podcast, which I was talking about this stuff. Here, let's see if we can find something on the Kunstler-Kotkin feud. We'll just type that in. We'll type in Kunstler-Kotkin feud. we find here? Oh, you guys can't see what I'm looking at. Here we go. So that's the one I just read, I think. Many Layers of Travail. For Lou Rockwell. Lou Rockwell is a libertarian website. But Jim Kunstler writes for it sometimes. Oh, and this is from not so long ago. All right, before I dive into this, let's just do a little Control F and type in Kotkin. And the only reason this came up is because there's an ad for Joel Kotkin's book in this essay. So that Control F find, in my personal lexicon, that action is grep. What is it? Global. What does grep stand for? It's a Unix thing. Grep stands for Global Regular Expression Print. Right. When I worked at Amazon doing customer service, we worked in a Unix environment. And then just after I left, and I'm so glad I left before they did this, they tried to switch over to a graphical user interface for all the customer service tasks, and it's so slow. Kunstler-Kotkin feudalism. All right, let's try that. Front Porch Republic. The Critic. The Wondrous Magnificent Cities of the 21st Century. By Ed Ring. I don't know who that is. Actually, I looked at this earlier. I didn't read it, but I recognized the first two paragraphs. The American Conservative recently laid an egg. They published a misanthropic, pessimistically aggressive Malthusian screed written by James Howard Kunstler. Kunstler's Why America's Urban Dreams Went Wrong attacks pretty much every urban amenity Americans have built since the invention of the automobile. And his reasoning, all of it, reflects a dismal lack of faith in human creativity and adaptability, paired with a certainty that the 21st century will be one of declining fortunes and devastating scarcity. Kunstler is pushing what he calls the long emergency, also the title of a book he wrote in 2005, a general contraction whereby the urban metroplexes of the U.S. have assumed a scale and complexity of operation that cannot be sustained in the coming disposition of things. They will contract substantially. Well, people are leaving the cities right now. You could say it was because of COVID. Hey, again, here is the only reason this came up. I don't think it's going to talk about Kotkin. Here's an ad for Joel's book. So I'm not going to read this. Let's see. Neo-feudalism and its new legitimators. The Critic. Today's oligarchs depend on a modern, overwhelmingly liberal clerisy for legitimacy. Oh, this is written by Joel Kotkin. You know what? I'm not going to read this. Let's just try their names. The Suburbanist Paradox. By Jason Verone. Don't know who that is. The Atlantic Monthly's Matthew Iglesias argues that high-density living is a key strategy to fight climate change. Iglesias takes issue with fellow Atlantic online blogger Ross Douthat and author Joel Kotkin, who defends suburban sprawl, what James Kunstler has famously called the most destructive development pattern the world has ever seen, and perhaps the greatest misallocation of resource the greatest misallocation of resources the world has ever known. Reporting on a recent talk by Kotkin, Dothit writes, "The notion that Americans are moving back to downtowns in large numbers is a myth," Kotkin announced. "Instead, they're moving ever outward, into new exurbs and rural areas. The traditional unipolar urban downtown isn't going to make a comeback. Young couples with families can't afford to live there, and aging baby boomers don't want to. The American city of the future will be more of an archipelago of suburbs than the kind of one downtown organism bred by the Industrial Revolution. We aren't creating more New Yorks and Chicagos, we're creating more Los Angeleses." Shouldn't it be more Los Angeli? Joke. Iglesias counters. There's the paradox. The urbanist proposal isn't, "Hey, jerks, why don't you all move to dense downtowns?" Rather, the proposal is something like, "Why don't we impose carbon taxes so that things like driving long distances and heating or cooling large detached structures are priced in accordance with their social cost? Why don't we stop having the federal government heavily subsidize driving cars as the preferred mode of transportation? Why don't we have more areas that allow for high-density zoning, thus reducing the cost of urban housing? It's not that we urbanists are unaware that many people live in low-density areas because it's cheaper. It's precisely that we are aware of this fact that makes us believe that the traditional unipolar downtown could make a comeback. Oh, this is short. Dang. Is that the end of it? It is. Wow. Quite naturally, the combination of cars being invented, cars being massively subsidized, and governments being successfully lobbied by car companies to dismantle mass transit systems led to a massive shift in the direction of sprawl. But by that same token, if we step away from those policies to some extent, we'll see a rebalancing in the direction of urbanism. Now, the early suburbs were built along train lines outside of towns. I don't know that the current street pattern is really amenable to being replaced with rail-borne mass transit, but it's worth investigating. Let's see. Ben Rubber says, Neo-feud. Is there a set definition of rules on the neo prefix? Seems like a fancy thing people like to do. I don't know if there's a strict set of rules, but when somebody uses that formulation, I understand them to mean that here is the current manifestation of something that we're familiar with from the past. Parker writes, "You reading of Kunstler piece, well, the first sentence before I stopped listening, got me reading too much about the Mr. Potato Head controversy." So yes, Mr. Potato Head has been renamed just Potato Head. He is now non-gendered, or I don't know, whatever pronoun Potato Head prefers is that entity is non-gendered now, which personally I think is bad business. Before you had a Mr. and a Ms. or Mrs. Potato Head. Oh, of course, that's that's endorsing patriarchal social arrangements, aka families. Parker writes, I read about conservative people angry about Mr. Potato Head and people on the left making jokes about the angry people. Well, yeah, it's kind of hard to get angry at that and still seem like a serious, sober, adult that anybody should take seriously. If you're going to make fun of it, you need to make fun of it in a jovial way. Getting angry about something like that just makes you look, twitchy. I watched a video by the channel Geography King about the movement of people in the U.S., says Parker. People, read blogs. Read things that you can then send to me and I can read aloud. So I'm going to take this off the screen so as to hide Ben Rubber's last name and email address and go to that George Friedman link. Where is it? Oh, there we are. Okay. I was a little reluctant to read anything from Friedman just because I've spent so much time with his book. Oh, what's the book called? I spent so much time with it, but I can't bring the title to mind because I've been listening as an audiobook, which means I don't look at the cover when I pick it up. The Storm Before the Calm is the name of his book. All right. COVID-19 and the American Climax. Woohoo! Sounds intriguing. Thoughts in and around geopolitics by George Friedman, March 4th. That's today. Dang. Hot off the press. On Tuesday, I received my first COVID-19 vaccine dose by driving over 100 miles to Waco, Texas, to a CVS pharmacy where the vaccine was available and where I was able to get an appointment. On the way home, the radio announced that Texas Governor Greg Abbott had ruled that Texas would abandon the precautions, including wearing face masks and other social distancing measures that had been in place. All businesses are free to reopen at 100% or whatever capacity they choose. This comes a couple of weeks after Dr. Anthony Fauci, the president's chief medical advisor, said in response to a question that Americans may still need to wear masks in 2022, as if, despite the fact that all who want the vaccine would have been vaccinated by then. At the same time, a controversy is raging over opening schools. Some argue that keeping children out of school for an extended period disrupts their social development. I think schools pervert their social development, but whatever. That without in-person interactions with other children, youths will suffer social dysfunction. Teachers' unions argue that reopening schools would leave teachers vulnerable to infection and endanger lives. It has now been more than a year since the first reported COVID-19 death in the... Oh, I have to subscribe to Geopolitical Futures to get the rest of this, huh? Well, let's see what the subscription offers are. Yeah, that ain't happening. Never mind. Let's see. Ben Rubber, did you see that article is behind a paywall when you sent it to me? You tease. Where are we? Dryland Fish. A century ago, out here in the boonies, there was a pretty nice network of trains for folks to bridge the wide distances between everything in this region. Yeah, the buying up of public transit by tire, automobile, and oil interests companies is pretty frustrating. The U.S. scores pretty low on public transit availability, I think. Well, anybody who's ever been to Europe, or in my case, having lived in Japan for 2 years, yeah, I can tell you, I've lived in a country that has functional, usable, convenient mass transit. And we don't have that here in the U.S. The closest we've come that I'm familiar with from personal experience is the New York City subway and the Washington, D.C. subway. Removing Mr. makes it sound like more of an insult. Yo, potato head. That's true. I hadn't thought of that. But, my point that I don't think I finished was they used to have 2 toys, and now they just have 1 in the potato head line. You've gone from 2 products to 1. Some people would have bought both. Not good business. And, the people who are getting all, who object to the Mr. and Mrs. Potato Head, to the traditional gender roles and the traditional family roles. 1, fuck them. 2, they don't buy a lot of toys because they don't have kids. So, Parker writes, I think the controversy is marketing genius. So many more people are thinking about Mr. Potato Head. Yeah, and probably buying, counterfeits from China that Hasbro or Mattel or whoever makes Mr. Potato Head, they're not going to see any of that money. The character will be Mr. or Mrs. Potato Head under the brand Potato Head. Oh, darn. I didn't know it needed subscription. Okay, good. There are child potato heads, too. I think we need a Mr. Marijuana Head. Hey, that could be me. How Lolita escaped obscenity, laws, and cancel culture. Well, yeah, in the movie they made her older. That was the smart part. By Emily Mortimer. My father, John Mortimer, brought me up to believe that you can be a good person and kill someone and a perfectly awful person who never gets so much as a parking ticket your whole life. It's an education I'm proud of. He was an author and a criminal defense barrister. In his words, the only playwright ever to have defended a murderer in the Central Criminal Court at the Old Bailey. And his prowess in both professions, rode on his ability to see past easy morality and to respect the fact that the truth is never one-sided, and therefore art should not be either. My father defended a lot of murderers, his favorite clients, because he said they had generally got rid of the one person on earth who was really bugging them. And a kind of peace had descended over them. But his other specialty was obscenity. He was of the I may disapprove of what you say, but I will defend to the death your right to say it school of thinking. He became well known in the field of championing such works as the Sex Pistols album, Never Mind the Bollocks, charged with public indecency, Oz Magazine's School Kid edition featuring a centerfold of the beloved cartoon character Rupert the Bear with an enormous erection, wow, and Herbert Selby Jr.'s transgressive novel, The Last Exit to Brooklyn, which got made into a pretty watchable film, I have to say. All were prosecuted in England, and all but the Sex Pistols under the Obscene Publications Act of 1959. My dad, who died in 2009, is with me every day somewhere, somehow or another. In the funny things my kids come out with, in my conversations with my mother, in wondering what he would have had to say about this or that. But there was a period a few years ago when I found myself thinking about him a good deal more than usual. I was publicizing a film called The Bookshop. The film was directed by the Catalan filmmaker Isabel Coixet? I don't know, something. Who had adapted it from Penelope Fitzgerald's novel. It takes place in the year 1959 and tells the story of Florence Green, a lonely widow, played by me, who decides to open a bookstore in a little coastal town in the west of England. The film was released in 2017 during the first wave of the Me Too movement, which was a fitting moment for the story, being about a quietly heroic single woman in middle age who comes up against the powers that be, mostly men, in her bid both to run a small business and to arrive at some sort of self-realization. But an interesting subplot in both the novel and the movie came up a good deal in the conversations I was having with journalists. The year 1959 was when Lolita was published in England, and Florence Green is faced with the dilemma of whether or not to sell the novel in her shop. In every interview, I was asked by journalists what I thought about Lolita as a work of fiction and whether I thought it publishable today. I thought about my father and about a time when fiction was still considered dangerous enough to prosecute. I thought about the fact that Lolita had escaped the absurd gaze of the obscenity law. I wondered if indeed the novel might have been even more difficult. I wondered if indeed the novel might have an even more difficult time getting published now than it did in the 1950s, and I wished my dad were still alive to talk about it all. I read Lolita in college, and I was too lazy to bother to read it again when preparing for my part in the bookshop. I was already a huge fan of Nabokov's. I had bought copies of his memoir, Speak Memory, in bulk to hand out to my friends at college, and I had worn thin his lectures on Russian literature, which are as withering as they are brilliant. I'll never forget my shocked delight at his excoriation of Dostoevsky's... I'll never forget my shocked delight at his excoriation of Dostoevsky as a mediocre writer with wastelands of literary platitudes. So there she is. Emily Mortimer as Florence Green in The Bookshop, a film directed by Isabel somebody. The role led Mortimer to reread Lolita. Actually, she said that it didn't. But I'd been talking so knowledgeably about Lolita to the press that I was overcome with a kind of sheepish compulsion to read it again, after the fact. I bought a copy, and I read it. And I realized, as I did, that I had absolutely and for certain never read it before. I can't have done. Any expertise I'd claimed to have on the subject of Lolita was invented. All I knew must have come only from spark notes, plot summaries, and crib sheets, or maybe from watching the movie, because if I ever had read Lolita, I would have certainly remembered the experience. I wouldn't have been so shocked and scandalized. My breath wouldn't have been so taken away. My brain and heart and soul wouldn't have been so twisted and fried and made to feel so sad, so upset, so elated, and so blown apart all at once. I will admit I have not read Lolita, and I haven't even seen the movie, or either version. It opens so thrillingly, and you jump... You know what? I did start to read it. Anyway, it opens so thrillingly, and you jump straight into its strange and beautiful depths with full abandon and excitement. Lolita, light of my life, fire of my loins, my sin, my soul, Lolita. The tip of the tongue taking a trip of 3 steps down the palate to tap at 3 on the teeth. Lolita. You're hooked, and it's stunning, and you still think at this stage that you've maybe read it before, and in any case, whatever whatever, you're completely in. But then just a few pages later, as Humbert is, what the hell, cursed to live in a civilization which allows a man of 25 to court a girl of 16, but not a girl of 12, I had remembered much about Lolita, even if I had only pretended to read it. But 12? I certainly forgotten that vital digit, and it came as a shock. Here was Humbert extolling certain East Indian provinces where men of 80 copulate with girls of 8, and nobody minds. And here he was, on his habit of seeking out very young girls wherever he could find them, in orphanages and reform schools and public places. Ah, leave me alone in my pubescent park, in my mossy garden. Let them play around me forever, never grow up. And here he was fantasizing about a future in which he marries Lolita and has her child and rapes her too. Oh, and rapes her too. I might eventually have her produce a nymphette with my blood in her exquisite veins, a Lolita II, who would be 8 or 9 around 1960, and I would still be dans la force. Don't speak French, sorry. And then, what's this? Now he's imagining a third generation of abuse with his granddaughter? As I read all this and thought about all the things I'd been pontificating about to the press, I started to wonder how on earth Lolita had managed to get published then, without ever having to endure the indignity of prosecution. Why had Lady Chatterley's Lover been prosecuted in 1960, but not Lolita the year before? That's not to say its journey was plain sailing. It had been initially rejected by all the big publishing houses in the United States, so Nabokov resorted to the pornographic French publisher Olympia Press, only to have it banned in France and also in Argentina, New Zealand, South Africa, and Australia. In England, all copies were seized by customs from 1955 until 1959, when it was finally published to huge consternation and controversy. But to my knowledge, no criminal case was ever brought against Lolita, which is surprising given that it appeared in the world at a time when literature was far from safe from the clutches of the obscenity laws, and given that it's still the most shocking, sensational thing you've ever read. So many questions ran through my head as I read on. I wanted to call people up and ask them if they'd actually ever read Lolita. I wanted to tell them to immediately do so, just to be able to talk about it, to hear what they thought. For lack of obliging friends, I turned to Google. It wasn't just me concerning myself with the question of whether Lolita would find a publisher today. Dan Franklin, who published Ian McEwan and Solomon Rushdie at Jonathan Cape, had speculated on the subject too. I wouldn't publish Lolita. What's different today is Me Too and social media. You can organize outrage at the drop of a hat. If Lolita was offered to me today, I'd never be able to get it past the acquisition team, a committee of 30-year-olds who'd say, if you publish this book, we will all resign. Laura Waddell, a millennial and a publisher, retorted in The Guardian, the true publication history of Lolita is so much more interesting than boring, bad-faith millennial bashing. To claim that it would never be published now is a red herring. I thought about this, and I realized that in actual fact, given its almost absurdly shocking content, Lolita has been relatively gently treated in recent years too. You can't help wondering why the same court of public opinion that has all but canceled artists like Balthus and Picasso has spared Lolita, at a time when even a painting of a female nude is talked about as potentially offensive political statement. How has the novel managed to avoid a searing reassessment? In fact, women have always and continue to be some of the noisiest defenders. From Dorothy Parker, Lolita is a fine book, a distinguished book. All right then, a great book. To Lena Dunham, who says it's her favorite book, Lolita has spellbound women as much as men. This is a feat, given it's the ultimate example of the unreconstructed male gaze. A middle-aged man, I thought he was in his 20s. Oh, wait. A middle-aged man's obsessive account of an underage girl whom he does nothing but sexualize, objectify, and rape from the first page to the last. My father wrote about the last exit to Brooklyn trial. I remembered standing in front of 3 very intelligent Lords of Appeal. I was trying to describe the writer's position. I told them it was impossible to be a writer and be told there are some areas of life which you are not allowed to write about. To the judges, this came as an entirely new idea, even though it was a total cliché to anyone who works in literature. The general view of the court seemed to be that if Shakespeare wrote Lady Macbeth, that meant Shakespeare was in favor of murdering the house guests. They found it impossible to separate the author from the subject with which he was dealing. In some ways, I think it's much easier to separate the writer from his subject in the case of Nabokov and Lolita than it is to separate Picasso, say, from his paintings, or Woody Allen from his films, or Balthus from his little girls. Nabokov was a happily married man who admired and adored his wife, Vera, and lived an exemplary life as an academic and author. By all accounts, his only extramarital dalliances were with buxom, middle-aged women. If Nabokov had ever had dark, venal thoughts like those of Humbert Humberts, they remained thoughts, or words on a page. But I think there are other reasons Lolita has endured, despite being more shocking than many pornographic novels of its time, and despite the reappraisal that many other transgressive works of art have gone through in our time. First, it's very funny. My dad always said you could get away with anything in court as long as you made people laugh. In obscenity cases, the first thing I did was to make the jury laugh. The great object of the judge and the prosecutor was to stop the jury from laughing. Humbert is hilariously self-aware and funny, even in extremis, even at the height of the drama, when he is out for blood and on the road to ruin when a lesser author would have forced his hero into earnestness, our hero is still cracking jokes and making us laugh. The novel is also written in brilliant prose. Nabokov himself claimed that the book was a record of his love affair with the English language, and the feeling is of language being used as it has never been used before and might never be again. You read about awful things in vertiginous, sensational sentences that take your breath away. As Humbert confesses, you can always count on a murderer for a fancy prose style. Murderers were my father's favorite clients, not just because they were the most obliging and compliant. He also considered murder to be the most human of crimes, the one crime any one of us could commit. We might not rob a bank, we might not sell drugs or fiddle our taxes, but he thought that all of us, when pushed, could just about find it in ourselves to kill. I think he said these things in part to shock. As a writer and a renegade, he was interested in paradoxes, but he also really believed in finding the good in people, and in the simple notion that, there but for the grace of God go I. What my father did as a criminal defense barrister and as a writer was to try to persuade a jury or a reader to find it in themselves to empathize with the character he was presenting, no matter the circumstances. It's impossible to retreat to any kind of moral high ground when you read Lolita, partly because Nabokov threads a strange emotional honesty and purity through his portrait of obsession. And that's a bad way to clear one's throat. I'm setting a bad example. You should first try to swallow away whatever is clogging up your vocal cords. And then if you must, expel a burst of breath, do it without voice. But, continuing. Because, as well as all the other things the book is, Lolita is one of the most beautiful love stories you'll ever read. You'll finally understand this in its last, thrilling, devastating, tragic section. From Humbert's final rejection by Lolita, thank God, his breaking down in his car as he drives away for the last time, the windshield wipers in full action but unable to cope with my tears, to his desperate incantations, I loved you. I was a pentapod monster, but I loved you. I was despicable and brutal and turpid, and everything, something French, to the moment he is apprehended by the police and remembers hearing the sounds of children playing when Lolita first disappeared. I stood listening to the musical vibration from my lofty slope. I knew that the hopelessly poignant thing was not Lolita's absence from my side, but the absence of her voice from that concord. Humbert's pain is palpable and so deeply relatable. The agony of lost, impossible love, the feeling of having defiled something innocent because you loved. It's all too familiar. The most thrilling, beautiful, and disturbing aspect of the novel is that, as well as finding Humbert's heart on the page, we also find, like it or not, a bit of our own. Lolita makes us see with the eyes of a man who is a pedophile, a rapist, and a murderer, and that's, I think, the essential reason it's escaped the harsher accusations of both the courts and the moral police in the 60 years since it's been published. While it doesn't apologize for Humbert's vile transgressions, neither does it romanticize them, although Humbert himself is ridiculously romantic at times. The author forces his reader to confront, on every page, the monstrous nature of his protagonist. There is no escaping his awfulness, but we get inside his head and his heart. we end up not only empathizing with, but also loving a murderer and the rapist of a young girl. And it feels really good. It feels like a deep relief. It feels exhilarating and paradoxically cleansing. Nabokov called Lolita the purest of all his books. My father could never have got Humbert off in a court of law, but he would have argued fiercely for his humanity, just as he argued for the humanity of all the most dangerous and immoral people he defended. Unlike many lesser works of fiction, some of which my father found himself advocating for, Lolita had been protected by the refuge of art, where it should be forever safe to explore the thoughts and feelings of people capable of the most monstrous things. Lolita remains unassailable because it disarms you and transcends judgment. The experience of reading it, if you do actually read it, is to relinquish concern with right or wrong and just feel the things as another person feels them. One of the most precious attributes and perhaps the greatest measure of our humanity is our ability to do this. Florence Green in her little bookshop understood it. My dad knew it, Nabokov did, and really, anyone who is a reader knows it too. Dang! That's some good writing. Right on. All right. Oh, that's right. That was a Stanley Kubrick film. Let's throw that in the chat, that URL. Ba-boom. All right. What do we got here? The old school house design where kids of all ages learn together seems optimal. Homeschooling can be a little too isolating, I think, but I don't know. I grew up in the CAFO school approach. They took away Mr. Potato Head's pipe in 1986. After that, a strictly non-smoking potato. CAFO confined animal feeding lot. Ah ha ha. Shocking indeed. Read it just out of school. Found a copy at the flea market. Thought it perverse at the time. Though not terribly shocking in comparison to lots of other literature. Why is that? I found that when I make a sound like I'm vomiting, it clears it most triumphantly. Because if you do that regularly, you can create nodules on your vocal cords. It's very bad for them. I mean, the thing that is best for clearing the throat is kind of embarrassing to do in front of other people, but it's just to sustain a note. Just take a deep breath and go, that clears it right up. But, as I say, embarrassing to do in front of other people. Unless you're a singer and you can do it on key. Then you're showing off and deserve a beating. Very interesting, yes, good writing. Agreed. Okay. Talk amongst yourselves, I gotta work now. Let's see. Actually, I don't want to minimize that. I want to move it to the other screen. And let's bring on Clip Studio Paint. Alrighty. So, pedophilia is a delicate topic. Would be great if it could be discussed with humility in public, like this book gets at. I'm going to comment on my own pronunciation. I think, as an American, I should say pronunciation. I think pronunciation kind of sounds British, but pedophilia is definitely the American way to say it, and I hear Brits say pedophilia, and they shorten it to pedo, which kind of grates on my ears. Which is weird, because in general, like most Americans, I typically gravitate to British English. Let's stop distracting KMO and let him get to work. Oh, no. I love the distraction. Distract away. But I am getting to work. Oh, and hey, Ed. Welcome aboard. Good to see you. All right. Oh, what am I doing? There we go. All right, so I've got a hodgepodge of layers going over here, and it's not my usual working method. What I'm trying to do is like this basic composition in this first panel, I'm going to reuse it in panels 1, 2, let's see, 5, and 6. Or no, 6 and 7. So I want to get it just to the point where I just want to have it be a finished thing that I can just cut and paste into those different panels. And the only thing that will be on a separate layer will be Pix's head. She's going to look forward in some and look over to the left in others. And I'm also going to change the position of Derek's mouth. Alrighty, so what is this thing I've labeled layer 1? That's Derek tones. I think there's a version. There was a new version of Lolita made into a film either in the 80s or 90s, and Jeremy Irons played Humbert Humbert. And I think at the same time, Irons recorded an audiobook of it. And of course, I can't play any of that here, so I won't even go looking for it. Jesse Bering is an interesting author who gets at the nonsense around topics around sex. Looks like his book Perv is closest one right now. All right. Steering yoke. Yeah, it's really just a pattern that's on it. So yoke ink. Okay, that's like everything. So we gotta change that title. Rename. Hello. Where is it? Maybe I just right click, double click. There we go. Yoke ink and more. All caps. Hey, anybody else want to do a cold reading of something? I could start a Zoom call and you could read to me. Any takers? Oh, it's just the background tone. Okay. So, Derek tones. A little darker than the background. Homeward Bound. Why is that song on my head? Oh, because it started playing on as a commercial in the cat video, or video for cats. I can post links now with the shiny blue wrench. Ah, Benna Rubber has the power. He'll go mad with it. Careful. Ed's been responsible with his use of the power, but Benna Rubber, I don't know. We might all find ourselves in the service to a cruel and tyrannical master. Well, a new and tyrannical master. Parker says, I might take you up on that, but not today. No practicing now. It's got to be a cold reading. Any budding dramatists in the chat? Is there anybody listening to all this who's not participating in the chat? All right, now I need to draw the interior of the spaceship cockpit. So, it calls for a new layer. On the topic of obscenity, anybody want to comment on the word cockpit? Ah, I see a new icon. Who is it? Daniel Poole. Yep. Yeah, just tapping away at work. Daniel, do you have earbuds or headphones on? Is that how you can join us, or in spirit anyway? Well, now you have joined us. I mean, you have posted. I would like to get a yoke for my computer so that I can set up a Cessna 172 flight simulator and learn how to pilot light aircraft. Do it, man. Oh, let's see. What am I doing? Okay. Sketch. All right, let's get the scale. All right. Actually, I don't think we're going to see any of the window frame. Bigger still, bigger than that. Wow, all right. Bigger still, already. Now we're getting close. Yes. That's about it right there. Okay, so let's pull back. Yep. Take down the opacity. And convert, delete. All right. So, even more. And what do we got? There's some stuff on beaver moving into a farm that has been wilding that I've been meaning to read. I would like to, you read that. I would say that word is no obscene. Still funny. Let's see. A shuttlecock is the thingy people hit when playing badminton. True that. The word cock is, and its homonyms appear often in the English language. We had a feedback joystick that my brothers and I used with Flight Simulator growing up. That was the coolest. Feedback, as his it would give pretty realistic resistance according to turbulence and G-forces. Ben Robert, do you know if the Burning Man Festival will be happening this summer or not? Ooh, I hadn't even considered that. All right. There we go. Maybe white is going to work better here. Yeah. You can go away. Do not save. Huh. So, about the middle of her head and about his chin, which is not the same in this one. Oh, we'll do it like that. That. There's a second row of seats behind them. What's the rest of it look like? I mean, there's going to be like instrumentation panels and such. Let's do a little. I think he's got some tubes hanging down or some conduit. Yeah, like that. In fact, I could just cheat. Just grab that. And paste it in there. Have to be smaller. There I go again. right? All right, rather than fake it, let's define an eye level and a vanishing point. I guess the eye level is whoops. What's happening? Come on, undo. That's our eye level. That's too thick, though. So that'll be our vanishing point. There. Hey, Jim D's here. What have we got? What have we got? Wow. Active chat. I like it. Have we hit our 100 messages yet? Do we have the award? I don't never been to Burning Man. I rarely travel far because the cost of it weighs on me. Yeah, I feel you. Went to Hawaii a few years ago because brother-in-law was stationed there in the Navy. Might be my last big trip. You know, there's only 2 states that I have not visited. Hawaii is one. The other is Maine. I could go and borrow my neighbor's car and be in Maine in like a little over an hour, but I just haven't been. Let's see. Concerning the cost of my 4 weeks in Mexico, my biggest cost was revenue not earned while I was away. Yeah, I hear you. The light and accommodations were nothing major. The light? Hello, Jim D. Hey, Edward. No, the flight. Okay, gotcha. I see Beaver and Cock are on the subject list. Vaccinations as well. Are you the man who drives an electric bus in Seattle? Which goes well with B and C. I drive buses in Seattle, not electric, but I own an electric car. I've owned 4 electrics so far. That's very nice. I used to work for an electric taxi company, says Ed. Jim asks, whereabouts? I drove 4 models, Tesla S and X, Nissan Leaf, and Kia Soul. I've never driven any of those vehicles. Ed continues, in Montreal, the company went bankrupt. Jim says, cool. Not a fan of Teslas myself, says Jim. They could not compete with the Prius taxis and with Uber. One should not have to navigate a screen to defrost the windows. Yeah, I'm in agreement with you there, Jim. I want physical controls for things like that. Do you consider Elon Musk to be a founder of Tesla Motors? That's an interesting question. Who else would be? Jim says, yeah, there's a real barrier to entry for electrics. Jim says, Elon is the figurehead. Don't know who founded. Edward says, the Tesla screens are a single point of failure, right? Jim says, probably, which is another reason to hold them in low esteem. Ed asks, did you watch the Starship SN10 test flight from yesterday. I did. Amazing. Amazing, particularly the landing. They stuck it with no explosions. Nope. Is that a musky thing? That is a SpaceX thing. Ed says, it is the SpaceX all-purpose ship in development. It is designed to be able to do orbital, moon, and Mars missions. Jim says, he is. Ed says, they are developing it now. Jim says, here, that is. So, Ed, you've aroused my curiosity. If not Elon Musk, who is the founder of SpaceX? Not SpaceX, Tesla Motors. Who's the founder? And Ed, of all the electric cars you've driven, which was your favorite and why? I was watching a video last night. A guy was reviewing a $300 electric assist bike that is sold at Walmart, of all places. And once again, I am dreaming of moving to Puerto Rico. Now that the pandemic is closing down. Well, it isn't closing down yet. That's wishful thinking, but soonish. Soonish, I hope. Let's see. All right. Elon Musk was an early investor in Tesla Motors. When Elon Musk showed up, it was basically a P.O. box in Delaware. I gotcha. But who's the founder? It existed as a legal corporation before he entered the scene. Ben Rubber says, I grew up shifting for my dad's when he would push in the clutch. Nice, smelly old blue diesel Ford truck. I drove a nice, smelly old diesel Ford truck for like 15 years. And yeah, it was a manual. We called it Old Blue, after the guy from that movie with Will Ferrell. I don't know which movie you mean. Jim D says, I think Musk took his PayPal money and funded the bejesus out of it. Yeah, he took his PayPal money and he started several companies. SpaceX, Neuralink, I guess he's doing a lot under Tesla, like the solar rooftop and the HVAC stuff that he's doing is all under Tesla. And I think he justifies it by saying that Tesla isn't a car company, it's a renewable or sustainable energy company. So anything to do with the Powerwall, that's also Tesla. So, off-grid power storage, battery-based, anything to do with the home, all that's coming under Tesla. Let's see. Yeah, Benny, that's the way to learn. When Elon Musk showed up, it was basically a post office box in Delaware, $300. Wow, says Jim. There's a good short CNBC documentary that covers it well. Boner Rubber says, I was really bummed out when I got to drive a big diesel truck where the shifting was electronic with a button on the steering. Really takes the whole experience out of it. Jim D says, we don't even drive buses that shift anything anymore. The diesel just powers an electric drive motor, no gearing. Congratulations, you've received 100 messages today with Restream Chat. The muscle memory you develop shifting standard vehicles is safer as a wider or gross use of arm motor skills rather than disembodied anticlimactic button pushing, says Ben Rubber. Jim says, Nikola, of course. I don't think Nikola Tesla started Tesla Motors, but who knows. Founders, Martin Eberhard and Mark Tarpening. Never heard of them. Here's the 25-minute CNBC documentary. Well, obviously I can't play it. Powerwall is interesting. I see no difference between the Powerwall and the Power Pack for the car. Well, except that one powers your house and the other powers your car. All right. I turn my eyes away from the chat. Cockpit sketch. Let's go with this. Alrighty, here we go. No, I don't want to draw with the line tool anymore. Now we're all freehand. I'm going to say that those back seats fold down when not in use, so I'm not going to draw them in. I'm just going to draw the door back here. See, I do probably need one more guideline. Or a couple more. Let's see. There we are. There we are. And that. Okay. Oh, that's a tangent. All right, let's move it over here just a little bit. Go. That. And that, so it's symmetrical. And I guess I will, let's see, use the straight line tool here. And then more of this good stuff. Has anybody been watching Snowpiercer? That's my favorite show these days. And also Resident Alien. There should be a new episode out today, I think. I mean, it aired yesterday, but it should be available to me today because I just buy the series through Amazon. There we go. Yeah, that's what I'm talking about right there. No more. No more of the perfect lines. Here we do the sketchy lines. I'm trying to take after Pinky in that regard. All right, how did I do this in the previous one? Okay. What do we got? What do we got? Powerwall. Oh, let's see. I read that already. The EU just. Let's see. What have I missed? Jim D says there's a Snowpiercer series. Yes, there is, and it's better than the movie, of course. Because it's a much bigger canvas on which to paint. It's nearing the end of its second season now. It's quite good. Highly recommend it. Jim says, huh. Ben Rubber says, wow, good on them. Are they suable once they hijack it? The movie is just the straightforward fight from the back to the front of the train, and then they derail it, and that's it. But in the TV show, it's got a different framing device. One of the main character, who's back in the tail, before the apocalypse, was a homicide detective, and there has been a murder in first class. And the train administration wants to keep it quiet, but they also want to know who did it. So they pull the former homicide detective out of the tail, and they turn him loose on the first class passengers to try to solve the murder, but they also treat him like shit. And then toward the end of the first season, then comes the revolution. And then at the end, the very, very end of the first season, comes the plot device that will drive the second season. And I'll say no more. But the fact that the main character is is investigating a murder, and there is no revolution in progress, but there's certainly lots of social tension, lots of class-based animosity and whatnot. He gets to go all over the train. So you get to really see how the different classes interact on the train. And in the movie, I think there was just 3 classes. There was first class, then the worker class, I forget what they were called, and then the stowaways in the tail. And in the film, you've got first class passengers, then you've got second class passengers, and then you've got third class passengers. The third class are the workers. And then you've got the stowaways in the tail, who are, the untouchables. And the first class passengers, the train administration uses the threat of pulling a tailie out of the tail and giving them a job and taking a bad worker and putting them back in the tail. So the real social animosity, they're really playing on the last place avoidance, psychological mechanism of the working people are kept in line with the threat that they will become the untouchables. It's pretty cool. All right. Ed says it's a Korean TV show about monster trains. I don't know what you mean there, Ed. Jim says, good question. Voids the warranty if nothing else. I saw the movie, Ed. Didn't know someone ran with it for a series. Well, Bong Joon-ho, who was the writer and director of the film, is an executive producer on the series. So it's the same people. It's not the same actors. It's not the same cast, but it's a second pass. It's a bigger, longer, more extensive examination of the idea of what if the only people left in the world were all on this train. The EU just passed a right to repair bill. Ben Rubber says, when you need to harvest the income in the fields that pays for the whole year, just take a ticket and wait in line. Jim, good. Ed says, to fight planned obsolescence, and hope the lot doesn't rot, says Jim. It's worse than planned obsolescence. It's you own nothing despite the price tag. Ed says, you guys are talking about something that I missed, obviously. Oh. Earlier, KMO offered any chatter to zoom in and do a cold reading. This ties into the article I've yet to read about farmers retaliating against not being able to fix their own machinery anymore, which is much cheaper. Okay, now I get you. Now I get where you're going. Right. You don't own your programming controversy. John Deere specifically says the farmers license the control software so only they can touch the machines in repairing stuff. Bit of a problem when the repair shop is several hundred miles away. Some guys are reverse engineering the control firmware. Good. This one, I don't have time to read right now. Bloomberg, let's see, farmers fight John Deere over who gets to fix an 800,000 tractor. Just so people can fix their rigs. Okay, then comes the question. There's a Snowpiercer series? All right. Here. Well, you guys know how to use Google. Snowpiercer's on TNT, but I just buy the whole series, one season at a time on Amazon Prime Video. Let's see. Ramen cuisine, I'm a fan. Who mentioned ramen? I've lost track of the chat. Hey, Paul's here. Hey, Paul. Ever heard of spread? It's Velveeta cheese, Wolf brand chili, ramen, and Fritos or Cheetos. Oh, that sounds good. I mean, it sounds horrible for you, but it sounds delightfully satisfying to eat. Welcome, Paul. Oh, a Carborama. Hey, Ed. All right. Anybody want me to start a Zoom call? You guys can talk. I'll probably keep looking here at the screen. Let's see, I'll do it. I'm not even waiting for your response. I'm starting the call. Host a meeting with video off. Launching. Join with computer audio.
This meeting is being recorded.
Invite. Copy invitation. Restream chat, and here we are. Paul's in the office, so he can't talk. Anybody who wants to, there it is. I'm calling up the Zoom interface, so I will see you knocking on the door. And now I go back to drawing. right, the door. Oh, Jim D. Admit. Sorry, I was looking away. There are new messages. Knock, knock, says Jim. So they lifted the mask mandate in good old Bubbaville, a.k.a. Texas. Oh dear, says Jim. Do they still allow breathing? Yes, pandemic is over.
I hope so.
Come on, man.
People gotta breathe, even in Texas.
Yeah. And Texas is the one place where they don't put up with your controlling bullshit. People are going to breathe how they want to breathe.
I got the right to infect everybody.
Well, I don't think they couch it in quite those terms.
Well, if they did, it would help things.
Let's see. So it's 1:41 there?
No, noon 41.
Noon 41, okay. Wow, and you're done working for the day? Or, at your day job?
Oh, yeah, quite.
Right. You get up at dark 30 then, right?
That is the problem, yes. I'm going to have a shorter shift in a couple of weeks, and I'll be able to sleep in. I mean, it's really exciting to be able to tell someone I'll be able to get up at 5:30 instead.
Oh, the luxury. So I was awake from about 2 a.m. to about 4 a.m. last night. And the cat was unsympathetic when I told her at 6:30 that I wasn't ready to get up.
I take it she wasn't the reason you were up earlier.
No. I was up earlier because my brain is used to marijuana, with sleep, and I've been without for a while. And my brain is not cooperative on that score.
Yeah, I've been without for a bit as well.
And it's ironic because we both live in places where it's legal. Well, you have the job thing.
I got the job thing, yeah. My urine is not my own.
Well, if anybody wants my urine, they can have it.
Didn't you get in trouble last time you offered that?
I don't remember offering that before.
Oh.
But, being a stoner, I tend to forget things.
Well, hey, it's like, what's the difference between a garbanzo bean and a chickpea?
Nothing, as far as I know.
Well, actually, Trump has never paid to have a garbanzo bean on him.
Is that a Steele dossier reference?
I don't know where the reference came from, but that was the joke, and everybody got it, and everybody laughed.
Yeah, there was this British dude who tried to sell this dossier. I mean, sell as in pass it off as legit, about Trump paying hookers to pee on a bed that Obama slept in Russia. And no news outlet would touch it because it was unverified and it was clearly bullshit. But then one person, one organization did run with it. And then everybody else covered the story of that organization running with it. And that was like 2 minutes. That was the story. And then the whole, well, this is discredited bullshit just dropped away. And then it was just, established fact because it was the Trump years and the resistance didn't really need any sort of corroborating evidence. If you had something nasty to say about Trump, they were anxious to hear it.
Yes. That's true. Even though I would not put, hooker P-sex past him.
Yeah,
I know he's a germaphobe. I know that.
Yeah.
But urine is pretty clean. It's mostly ammonia. Can't go wrong there.
Paul says Jim is right. That's tough on the brain. The P-tapes. Let's see.
Out of context message brought to you by KMO.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the screen, reading the words. Reading the words that appear there.
Yeah, that lag is hard to deal with.
Let's see. What's happening? Why can I not select? Oh, I did it again. I see what's going on.
Wrong layer again?
What's that? No, not wrong layer. Actually, wrong tool this time. So, you probably can't see it on screen yet, but I'm pointing at the Lasso Tool, which is one of the many selection tools. But there are two different tools that use that same lasso icon over here in the subtool menu. And I never use this bottom one for anything. I wish it wasn't there, but sometimes I select it by mistake. Alrighty. There we go. I don't need to do all this because I'm going to erase this layer in its entirety anyway. So, let's go. Cockpit ink. New layer. Vector layer. Cockpit ink. Alrighty. What you typing at? Jim D says you'll get RSS. Real simple syndication?
Oh, I think maybe I was thinking of a repetitive stress injury.
Oh.
Typing context into the chat.
Gotcha. So you get up at what time when you're not sleeping in until 5:30?
4.
Oh, it's like a life in the military.
I would not know. No, it's just you get up, you go to work, and you're done by 10:30. That's fine, but then I have to sleep, and I would just rather stay up.
Oh, do you go back to sleep when you get home?
Mostly, yeah.
And then stay up late at night?
Mostly, yeah.
So when you get up at 4, how long have you been asleep normally?
I usually get 4 hours.
Yeah.
I actually, it's weird. I don't know what happened where, but I got really used to getting 4 or 5 hours of sleep. And then on the weekend or my days off, I would just sleep in. I'd sleep for 12. Ooh. But if I get 8 hours, it doesn't work.
Huh. 8 hours is my ideal. It rarely happens, but I can do it. I mean, my brain will oblige. The cat will not oblige.
Right. No, I have that problem as well, but I can get 8 hours, but it has to be in blocks.
Now, I can't blame the cat because I've conditioned her to expect a treat first thing in the morning. So, as soon as she gets up and she starts thinking about that morning treat, she's like, "Hey, yo, dude, the sun's almost up. What are you doing in bed?"
Yeah, start smacking your eyeball through your lid.
Fortunately, it's not fortunate. I shouldn't say that, but surreptitiously, no, that would be in secret. Anyway, she can't do that. She's a 3-legged cat, and the missing leg is one of the front ones, so she can't really do the stand and smack move.
Saved by a surgery.
Yeah, saved by a bullet. or
Well,
birdshot.
wouldn't like to blame that. I wouldn't like to give credit to that asshole.
No. Something I'd like to give to that asshole, but it would mean
I
me going to
have
jail.
no problem
so.
I have no problem with shooting, but know what you're hitting.
Oh, she was shot at close range.
Ugh,
Whoever shot her
this is
knew
wrong.
exactly what they were shooting at.
That's just wrong.
Yeah.
Paul likes to wake up at 4 a.m., comma, and then he's going to put a really funny thing that completely makes him human again. Right, Paul?
Yeah.
See, my problem is if I were given my druthers, I would stay up all night. And having done it in the past with like 2 weeks off or so, suddenly I'm nocturnal after about a week. So by getting up at 4 a.m., I managed to keep almost a human schedule.
Oh, okay. Time for me to say it now. I just drew all that on the wrong layer. All right.
The layer.
The layer.
You can move that, right?
What I'm going to do is select it as closely as I can and then copy it onto the appropriate layer.
Camo hates that about your cat getting shot. Well, Paul, I think we're all universally, that sucks.
It sucked for her more than anybody, but yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, thank you for reading the chat.
Oh, that's right. This is like having somebody drive for me, and I can just like enjoy the view.
Whoops. What have I done?
Well, you cut out the arm holdy things.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
Paul has a CPAP machine which the hose ends up wrapped around my head. Wow, that if you toss and turn, I never thought about that, but you could pretty much hang yourself on those things.
I absolutely
which would be ironic.
As it's supposed to be good for your health.
I was strangled by the machine that helps me breathe.
Oh.
Yeah, CPAP is a touchy topic. See, I have a commercial driver's license, and every 2 years I have to go in there and prove that I'm healthy. And because I have a thick neck, I had an injury when I was 10 years old, and anyway, I have a thick neck. They all look at me like, oh, he's got trouble breathing. We have to send him for a sleep exam. Well, I learn that if you go in and take a sleep exam and you're even slightly apneic, then you're going to get a CPAP. Well, what if you put the CPAP on and you can't sleep? Well, then you go in for your next checkup and they say, well, how's the CPAP going? Saying, I can't use it while I sleep, so I don't use it. Oh, you have untreated sleep apnea. You can't get a CDL. So,
ouch.
Luckily, I've explained it to my doctors, and I was like, look, the CPAP is a fine thing for people who can sleep with it. But if I get it and I can't use it, it's a bad thing. So they all understand now. Can't even test for it.
You had to say it was a bad thing. Then they got it.
Yeah.
Tell them it's a bad thing. They're like, yeah, no, this is good. No,
you
it's
should
a
try.
bad
You
thing.
should try it. It's like, no, you understand. If I try it and it doesn't work, I'm screwed. Oh, okay. Good point. Thank you. Yes.
What's that? I love the sleep I get from the machine. I can feel the difference between with and without the machine, but it is tough to sleep with.
Yeah, I sleep like a baby without the machine. So I mean, I wake up half the neighborhood, but I don't care. I'm asleep.
Do you share a bedroom with somebody?
Not very often.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I let her. That's the thing. When you get older, sharing a bedroom is really like you look at each other and go, why? Because, she'll wake me up with her radio and her kicking, and I'll wake her up with my breathing. It's like, okay, well, let's both get some sleep.
Gotcha.
I do not wake up gasping for air, Paul. If that were the case, I would be so on the CPAP machine. Yeah, but no. I am told, now this has not been confirmed by any machinery, so I don't even know if it's true, that I sleep with epic snoring.
Epic.
Epic. That has been the used, that was the word, yes. You would wake up in a panic if you didn't have the machine. Well, then I'm glad you have the machine.
Yes.
I'm not slamming people who have the machine. If they can sleep with it, good on them. I'm just afraid that if I got the machine and I couldn't sleep, then there would be a record of untreated apnea, and I would not be able to work anymore.
Yes, that all comes into the category of that would suck.
That would suck big hairy donkey balls. I'm sorry.
You've gotten used to that weekly paycheck or bi-weekly paycheck.
You really do. It's addictive.
Kind of build your life around it.
Yeah, saving up for new pipes pretty quick.
Getting a lung transplant?
Oh, no. Yeah, you're right. We're still talking about CPAP, aren't we?
Let's see.
Paul says he would wake up in a panic because I would be gasping for air while I was asleep.
That leads to some pleasant dreams.
This is before the machine. Yeah, okay. That completely makes sense.
New pipe.
No, the pipes, I'm changing the subject slightly. We have an old house. We have to get new plumbing. Turns out that steel pipes, even with galvanized on them, they don't last for 80 years. Yes, Paul, new pipes, brand new pipes that will hopefully last another 80 years or more. But it's an expensive proposition. If I were 20 years younger, I would do it myself, and I would just yell at myself for not doing it. But my knees don't bend that way anymore. It's sad.
Mm-hmm. All right. It was really nice when I had somebody else drawing backgrounds for me. Let me tell you, this is not my specialty.
So the irises of the conehead, are they like cuttlefish eyes?
Yeah, that's what I was going for. Yeah.
Okay.
That's Derek, by the way. He usually doesn't look like that. He usually looks more like an octopus, except he only has 4 tentacles. Actually,
okay.
Trivia. Piece of trivia for you. How many tentacles does an octopus have?
I'm told that the 8th was a penis.
The answer is 0.
Okay.
An octopus has 8 arms.
Okay.
A squid. A squid has 8 arms and 2 tentacles.
Where are the tentacles located? That makes the distinction.
It's not where they're located. It's their shape and function. The squid has 2 that are longer. Like the 2 tentacles are longer than the arms, and they have a sort of flared paddle shape at the end.
Okay.
And
yeah.
Let's just take a break and let's ask Dr. Google.
Okay. I'm going to answer Paul real quick. Jim, I am Jim. Do I have plumbing know-how? Let me think here. A little. I have enough to get myself in trouble. Actually, I know enough to keep myself out of trouble, having done some of the trouble myself. But I can look at a problem and say, I can fix that or I can't fix that. And it's a good thing. I can do anything in the toilet, no problem. I can rebuild a toilet, no problem. Undoing 80-year-old galvanized threaded steel, I can do it, but can I get it back in? Will I destroy it? It's a good question.
So, in scientific literature, a cephalopod arm is often treated as distinct from a tentacle, though the terms are sometimes used interchangeably. often with the latter acting as an umbrella term for cephalopod limbs. Generally, arms have suckers along most of their length, as opposed to tentacles, which have suckers only near their ends. Barring a few exceptions, octopuses have 8 arms and no tentacles, while squid and cuttlefish have 8 arms and 2 legs, or 2 legs and 6 arms, and 2 tentacles. The limbs of nautiluses, which number around 90, damn, I didn't know that, and lack suckers altogether, are called tentacles.
Wow. Oh, the nautilus is cool. Yeah, that thing looks like it's growing hair.
Alrighty, that was my distraction. Now back to the drawing.
That's right. Chain yourself back to that picture.
Yeah. I don't know if you were around when I explained why I'm slaving over this one panel, but there are...
I was not.
Yeah, there are 3 panels in this 8-panel strip that feature this view.
Mm-hmm.
So if I really, lock it in with a bunch of detail, then I can just copy and paste it 2 more times, and it looks like I put a whole bunch more work into this than I really did.
Export it, yeah. And if you want to really get hairy, just change one element in the shifting perspective, and wow, he must have done all of those panels by hand.
Wow. Most people don't think at all about the actual process of creating images. They just look at the image.
I like getting into the image. Somebody actually over on Facebook, a friend of mine had a picture of,
Fuckbook?
I believe, Fuckbook. Yes, thank you. Sorry, I said, what am I talking about? Had a picture. It was a screen of Middle Ages art, and it showed people swimming in the lake of fire, part of the hell thing. And somebody zoomed in, and one of the people in the lake of fire was making the rock and roll forever hand sign.
Horns up?
Horns up, yeah.
Right on.
Which I pointed out is like, I actually think Ronnie James Dio appropriated that symbol from Satan worship. The horns up was a sign of the devil.
I don't think that's a controversial viewpoint.
Okay, well, I've never heard it explained, so I saw, was it Christopher Lee on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, played a satanic priest, and he did the horns up. The mark of the devil is everywhere, and he did the symbol. And then I saw, I think, Ronnie James in We Sold Our Soul for Rock and Roll, and he's up there explaining, this means rock and roll forever. It's like, no, it doesn't, Ronnie.
If you believe that, you've been sold a bill of goods.
Well, you're enjoying the show, so put your hands in the air.
Yep.
Make the sign of the devil like you just don't care. I did not know that was not even a controversy. Well, my friend hadn't heard it, so, that's one that didn't know.
There was a comic strip that ran in the university newspaper at the University of Missouri when I was there, and also a cartoonist. And I remember there was a strip that he did where 2 characters are drinking and talking, and one says, "Why doesn't devil rhyme with evil?" And the other one says, "I don't know, but it would be a boon to heavy metal lyricists if it did."
Yep, low-hanging fruit observation right there.
Alrighty. Good one, Jim, says Paul.
I think he was... Actually, Paul, I wasn't kidding. It's like the male octopus uses the eighth arm to inseminate the female. And so, for some, I don't know if he grabs the goo and puts it in, or if he has a special attachment. But they don't use a separate penis, and well, given where the female cloaca is, maybe that would be impractical.
Oh boy. What is happening? Where is that line? Let's see.
Under her waddle.
I get it. I see. There we go. All right. Now. What do you hear from Myanmar?
I have heard nothing. The only thing I know of it was I saw on Stephen Colbert. The initial coup drove down a main avenue with a bunch of heavy armored personnels and tanks and stuff, while a woman was shooting her live internet, what do you call it, aerobics video.
Oh, really?
So, oh yeah. So she's actually a really good dancer, and she's just going to town to this dance music, and suddenly there are tanks in the background. And Colbert loved it so much he played it 3 times. It's just hilarious. I haven't heard anything from since then. It's sadly it's a place that that happens a lot.
Well, about
now,
50 protesters have been shot by the security forces in the last couple days, and one of them was a pretty young 19-year-old, so she's the cause celeb right now.
Now, is Myanmar formerly Burma?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll have to ask a guy at work. He's Burmese. He probably knows more than I do. He's pretty cool. He's got a tattoo in their language. I'm not sure what it's called, but I asked him one time what does it mean. He's like, "Oh, that's directions to get home in case I get drunk." And I'm like,
you can never move.
What if you move? It's like, okay, then from that house, take a left at the other house because I am staying at Paul's place. All of this, of course, in Burmese. It's like pretty soon you're like wrapping the tattoo around your elbow, and
then it says continued on left calf.
Exactly. What happens if you lose your root directory tattoo? You don't know which fragment tattoo to read first.
Okay, so foreground, no, dashboard foreground needs to be way up here. Okay.
So you're putting a lot of effort into the background, is that it?
Yes.
Okay.
Something I normally
right
don't
now you're
do.
Okay. And then you're just going to splash, splash, splash.
Yes. Once I get to the point where I'm reusing it, it's all going to pay off.
Yeah, I tell myself that with many different topics.
They're all going to fall like dominoes.
Once I can reuse it, everything will be great.
Oh, looks like the chat's dried up. All right, now.
Well, it's got 2 peoples there.
Well, good one, Jim.
Then again,
is from 3:58 my time, PM.
Yeah, but Paul's at the office. Oh, here we go.
Oh, really?
PMO, did you already discuss the suburban design topic?
I don't see that comment. Interesting. Oh, okay, there we go. Yeah. Briefly.
Well, which one was? Okay.
I read an article.
What was your comment?
I read an article from Joel Kotkin, basically pushing back against, the Andres Duane, Jim Kunstler line about how horrible the suburbs are.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually a recurring theme in his book. It's like, what are the options?
Back against the new urbanists?
Yeah. pushing back against people who are saying that the only legitimate living arrangement, unless you're a farmer, is to live in the city.
I heard that in the interview, and I have to. Well, in the interview, he was going on about extinction cities where you don't have any rental spaces big enough to raise a family.
Mm-hmm.
And that made a lot of sense to me, because right now we are in a major tiny apartment building boom. And when these places open, they're not going to be reasonable rents. I don't see this ending well.
I'm coming at it from a very personal point of view. I grew up in the suburbs, and to be a kid in the suburbs was pretty awesome.
Okay.
I lived on a cul-de-sac, and there was a sidewalk. And behind our house there was a creek, and then behind that there was lots of undeveloped land that was full of trails, and I would ride my bike on them, and it was
cool.
Yeah, I mean, that was in California, and I was only there from like kindergarten through the third grade. And then from fourth grade through 2 years of community college, I was in Kansas City, Missouri. But I had so many adventures in that kindergarten to third grade period. That's the bulk of my childhood memories. There was just so much opportunity for adventure and fun and exploration. And, I guess you have that in the city as well, but it's tinged with, crime and drugs and bad influences.
I gotta say, my experience in the city is less crime and drug ridden than my experience in growing up in a very rural area.
Well, a person I was close to, whose name I shall not mention, for privacy reasons, grew up in New York City and was using heroin at age 16. So that just wasn't an option in Raytown, Missouri in the 80s. There was no heroin to be seen.
Yeah. Well, yeah, our area was one of the first hit by meth. So, yeah, but that was just when I was in high school, and everyone was talking about it, but not really doing it yet. But I do remember you could get your stuff stolen. Your drunk drivers were hitting people all the time. There was a lot more abusive and destructive behavior in the rural areas. The problem, then you come to the city and it's like, wow, this is actually, I was apprehensive moving to the city when I came to college, and it's like, oh, this is actually quite mellow. But, I'm sure if I went to a certain other part of the city, it may be more crime ridden.
Well, you went to the UW, right?
Yep.
There was plenty of heroin in there in the late 90s.
Oh, I was out of there by then. Yeah. That was a more recent phenomenon. Our biggest, I don't know about problem drug, but ecstasy was becoming a thing.
Well, that was
when I was in school.
That was a bonus of being in Seattle when I was there.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This is interesting. Only did it once, but it's like, this is a lot of fun. Ah.
I did it considerably more than once when I lived in Seattle. Let's see.
Andres Duwani was talking about revitalizing mobile home parks at a recent Kunstler cast. Yeah, I think I heard that one. Now, Paul, was that the Andres Duwani interview where he was also talking about something I hadn't heard about? The modern architecture movement as a reflection of understanding how to treat the Spanish flu. Which I didn't. He was saying that, okay, with modern architecture, you get these huge windows and you get these flat roofs. Well, originally he was saying everybody knew that people who got lots of sunlight survived better from the Spanish flu. Now we know that's linked to vitamin D. So big windows and a flat roof where you can put a porch. He's also said that nobody went down to California or Florida until after the Spanish flu, because then they realized that people eat oranges, fresh fruit, also did well. So there is a contingent right now saying that with lots of vitamin D and C, you have a great deal of more survivability with COVID-19, which may be, connected.
Interviewed Bob Brown about that.
Okay, I haven't heard that one yet.
It's in the vault.
Okay, all right. That was the Spanish flu stuff. Yeah, the last vault I had was the Keith Preston. I probably have it on my player. I just haven't gotten to it yet.
So yeah, the Bob Brown one would have been before Keith Preston, I think.
Oh, well, maybe I just forgot about it. Or maybe, actually, no, I think I heard the Andres Duwani before I heard the Bob Brown, so they kind of bled together.
Well, Andres Duwani was not me. That was on the Kunstler cast.
I know, but it was, it was before you interviewed Bob Brown.
Gotcha.
Cam, I got to send you a link to a podcast I just heard talking about the silicon chip shortage.
Oh.
And they interviewed these guys who work in the chip industry. It is the cutting edge chips are fascinating. What they were talking about, getting down to the they're now able to use lithography on chips with diameters smaller than the width of visible light.
Really?
They use something called...
Is that like the 4 micron range, or what is that?
I believe it's the 10 micron range.
No, they're already below that.
I'm sorry, they were talking nanometers, so I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah. Micron was the wrong unit of measure. Nanometers is right, yeah.
Okay, so, yeah, they were talking about, maybe it is the 10 nanometer range. And we're talking about, I think that encompasses 3 silicon atoms.
So the problem is that you can't shrink the pathways further than that, because then the electrons don't stay in them. They just jump out.
Right. No, they're talking about, they're cutting pathways that are at the limit of the substrate. But this ultra high energy, ultraviolet is not something, you can't just have a bulb. I hope I don't screw it up, but he was saying you have to have a very high frequency laser hit a blob of molten tin that will generate the thing in kind of an explosion, and then you have to corral the exploded ultra EUV light with mirrors to hit the chip. And he says it's literally harder than going to the moon. And you have to do it 50,000 times a second.
Well, your machinery does.
That's right. Yeah. Well, you have to guide the machinery through that process. And he says it's so difficult that there have been 3 or 4 startups that have attempted to jumpstart the company in Taiwan, and they gave up after 10 years with nothing to show. So the reason everything is in Taiwan is this guy named Morris Chang, who was a Texas Instruments executive, who was really good, really sharp, but he got passed up for the top spot. He got disgusted and went back home. And they said, well, you know this stuff, why don't you open a factory here? And it became the #1 bleeding edge manufacture spot for all the chips. And one of the reasons is the company is a dream to work for. They're so good that nobody thinks, we really should outsource this. And now they're in a situation where people at Apple and all these high-end manufacturers are staying awake at night because Taiwan thinks of itself as sovereign and China thinks of it as a part of China.
Yes. And
so,
per Peter Zion, the Chinese Navy is designed from the ground up for one purpose, and that is to invade Taiwan.
Yes, exactly. And one of the interview guy who was hosting the podcast said, well, why don't we just expropriate all that stuff and move it off the island? I mean, it's a public company. And that's where they said, okay, that would be World War III.
Let's not do that.
Yeah, exactly. But I'll send you a link to it. I found it on Matt Stoller's newsletter.
Cool. Yeah, send that.
Yeah,
I'll memorize one little piece of it and I'll sound smart. It'd be awesome.
Like I just did.
Exactly.
That's the key to sounding smart, is to repeat one thing really well, or learn how to pronounce something really specifically.
Yes.
Like when somebody says, "Hey, you want to go to the football game?" It's like, "Oh, you mean and get chronic traumatic encephalopathy?"
No, I mean just to watch.
Oh, well, okay. Then I'll just get chronic drunken, whatever.
Chronically inebriated yet again.
Later, Paul. Stupid work asking you to do stupid stuff.
Oh, those fuckers.
Damn it. You got to tell them, man, I'm not going to hang around here unless you pay me. Oh, wait.
Oh, yeah. I knew there was a reason. Shit.
Fine, I'll do my job.
I know. It's a pain.
Oh.
Okay, what's happening?
Drawing straight lines, I could do that. Maybe I should be a cartoonist.
If you want to do the drawing of the straight line parts and I'll just draw the characters, that'd be awesome.
We have a brand new thing at work. They have a electronic forms now. So if you have any kind of form that you have to fill out, you have to get on a computer. And the form part is actually pretty good. The problem is it requires this 20-year-old authentication process that they built from scratch, and it's just awful. So we were seeing a decline in forms being filled out at all because nobody knows how to get any access to it. But the form part is, sometimes you get in an accident. Not that I ever do, but sometimes when
some people,
things hit you,
some drivers.
Some people, that's right. But I'm the shop steward, so I help people fill in the forms, and you have to draw what happened. When the old days, you drew it, it was all over the place. Now you can actually take a picture of a bus, and you can take a picture of a car, and you can rotate and do all the stuff that you're doing with vector arrangement. It's much easier. I think that they're going to have a much clearer understanding of what happened in the accident.
Right on, yeah. But drawing is not.
It's so.
Very few people are born able to draw. There is study involved.
Yeah, this guy was so happy with my helping him draw the accident. Then he gave me a gift certificate for Subway. It's like, oh, sweet. Thanks, man.
It is sweet. I like Subway.
Ever since I discovered double meat, I can go there again.
Double meat.
Without double meat, the sandwich is just too, nah. Well, it looks like I'm the only one watching, so I don't think you're going to get much in the way of chat.
Well, I have this whole voice-to-voice communication thing going on. I suppose it's an approximation of chat. Yeah.
It'll have to do.
Alrighty. There's about.
You watch battles. Oh, go ahead.
Oh, well, I was just going to say there's about 20 people usually who tune into these things after the fact. So.
Oh, they watch the live streams afterwards?
Yeah, well, because they work during the day, so.
Suckers.
Yeah, I know.
Don't they know all they have to do is get up at 4 a.m?
Yeah. Or live on very little money and be a cartoonist. We could do that.
Well, actually, I do both.
Yeah?
I'm part-time.
Oh. Do you have a part-time compensation, or are you get to work part-time and get the full salary?
I'm compensating for something.
Aren't we
no.
all?
I'm paid by the hour, so I only work paid for 5 hours a day right now.
Yeah.
It fluctuates depending on what work I pick. But I managed to save up a bunch, so I'm going to take an hour hit and pay and sleep in next time.
Sleeping in. I remember when I was a teenager, man, I could sleep like nobody's business.
Oh, yeah.
10 hours? Pfft, nothing.
Back in college, I was pretty renowned when I got up and I walked around. It's like, what are you guys doing up at 5 a.m? It's like, well, no, it's 5 p.m. You've been asleep for 20 hours. It's like, huh, interesting.
I feel great.
So I was going to say, you watched Battlestar Galactica, the new one, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Loved it.
There are two elements in the design of the Battlestar that crack me up every time I see it, and I own the series, so I've watched it a couple of times already. One of them are those oxygen reservoirs that you see suspended on the walls in the causeways.
I can't bring them to mind.
Well, there are usually two white ribbed cylinders every few feet.
Okay.
And I think they were meant to be emergency oxygen supplies. Those are boat fenders.
Oh, nice.
And the other element is in the sick bay on the main sick bay bed, what their version of the ICU. They tried to make it look like it was both old and cutting edge. So in the background, there's this big red switch on the backboard of the bed. That switch is a small boat battery switch. Most boats have two batteries, just because one battery, one chance. And that way you can switch from the one battery to the next in case you kill one of them. So you can start your motor. Yeah.
There was a film from the, I guess, early 80s, very early, maybe even late 70s, but it was called Galaxy of Terror. Don't know if you ever saw it, but
nope.
The guy who was in charge of the practical in-camera special effects and the background design, the set design, was a young fellow who went on to do nothing particular in his life. His name was James Cameron. And the sets look great, and they're built with like styrofoam packaging from McDonald's that they pulled out of the dumpster behind a McDonald's and spray painted and stapled onto the wall.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
And they just did a really good job, huh?
Uh-huh.
Wow.
Exactly.
I love seeing shit like that. You look really closely and it's like, wait a minute, that's an inflated condom. Or something like that. It totally looks like the star.
And I'm not entirely sure about the chronology, but shortly before or shortly after that gig, he got his first directorial job on Piranha 2, The Spawning. And then I think his next movie was The Terminator.
Wow.
Yeah.
Much to Harlan Ellison's chagrin.
Eventually they gave Harlan Ellison a credit.
No, they gave him a credit right away. They didn't pay him anything.
Ah.
I mean, Harlan Ellison wrote, I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
Yep.
And the Soldier for the Outer Limits. And you take those two, the time-traveling assassin soldier and I Have No Mouth, and you get Terminator.
Yeah. I mean, I've read I Have No Mouth. I haven't seen that episode of The Outer Limits. But from my perspective...
it's actually really good.
Is it?
It's one of the better ones. Anyway.
Well... James Cameron had done a film, like a short film, that never got released. But it took place in the future where machines ruled the world, and there was a young man and a young woman fighting back against the machines. And it was pretty low budget, but it also had, it impressed some backers. Mm-hmm. Which is why I think he later got to do The Terminator. And
right.
you can see the basic structure of The Terminator there. I mean, you can see the thematic elements and the stylistic elements in a rough form, but he had that in his head for a long time. And, and it was at that time, even way back then, that he was cooking up Avatar in his head.
Wow.
Yeah. So, flash forward to the late 90s when Avatar actually, gets made and comes out. And I remember talking to some young woman about it, and she was really unimpressed, and she had all of these, proto-woke criticisms of it.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, and I was like, this is a story this guy came up with in the 70s.
That actually makes a lot of sense, because he used the term unobtainium.
Oh, is that something from the 70s?
Yeah, it's an engineering term,
Oh, okay.
meaning it's a joke. It's oh no, that's made of unobtainium, meaning you cannot obtain it.
Yeah, you can't get it.
And he was so fixated. Well, that was what I came up with in the '70s. I think it'll make a cool element. No, that's stupid. I mean, everyone of my like electric vehicle friends that saw that, they kind of shake their heads. Like, unobtainium, really, really? He didn't get the joke.
I think he got it.
Well, then he should have called it something else.
No, I mean,
well, actually, didn't
it's a
George
miraculous.
Lucas did the same thing?
I mean, the whole premise of the film is there is this miraculous stuff on this planet that's going to save our bacon because we're out of power, and
Right.
unfortunately, some primitive people live there, and well, too bad for them.
Yeah, that tree is toast. That's right. And I did like many of the elements of the show, and it's entertaining. I'm not gonna slam him on that, but I think Kevin Smith and Scott Mosier in the Smodcast pointed out, it's like, all right, so when they do the nasty, they take their little head like tentacles and they click them together, but that's what they do when they ride the horse too.
Yep. And when they ride the pterodactyls.
Right. So are they having sex with those animals?
I've heard tell that some women achieve orgasm riding horses.
Well, I have some videos I will not be sharing with you about women who achieve orgasm with their horse.
Like, more directly, not just rubbing against the saddle.
Correct.
Yeah, I don't care to see those videos, so.
No, it doesn't show anything. It's an interview with this husband and wife team, and they both enjoy having sex with the horse.
Awesome.
Yeah. Have you seen Zoo?
No.
It is a documentary about the Enumclaw sex farm up here.
Oh, is it like in Nevada where it's legal?
No, Enumclaw, Washington.
Right.
Okay, probably about 10, 15 years ago, maybe more, a guy was taken to the hospital and later died of a perforated bowel from having sex with a horse. And it turned out there was a farm where these guys would gather to have sex with the animals. And they called themselves Zoo. That was their sexual orientation.
Oh.
So you got gay, you got straight, these guys were Zoo.
Gotcha.
They interview a couple of the participants. It was very well made as documentaries go. Just very open, not titillating, not exploitative at all. It's worth a view. I don't know if some people get squicked out by that. But I can understand why. I understand that. But in fact, back when I was in high school, in our neighborhood, somebody was stealing horse penises.
Off of live horses?
Off of live horses. They did it really well. The horses were not, they lost their penis, but they were not harmed. It was a surgical operation that somebody snuck in.
I love the careful emphasis you put on harmed there.
They didn't bleed out.
Gotcha.
They didn't die of infection.
Right.
But, I remember, Brent's girlfriend had her horse mutilated that way. It was very strange. Never caught the people.
I'm not sure that my life is richer for having that information in my head.
Well, for me, the movie Zoo answers the question, like, what the fuck happened with those horse penises back in high school?
Okay.
There's a group of people who really like
See, I wasn't struggling with that question.
You didn't grow up in Graham.
No.
Most people don't struggle with that question. This is true. And I would probably have been happier without that information. But, got to have something to talk to with all the horse owners. Let's talk about.
Wow.
Actually, I think George Lucas also did a short of THX 1138.
Mm-hmm.
It was only like 10 minutes long.
Yep.
And then he got the funding for the
full Monty.
Yeah, the full one with the guy from Apocalypse Now.
Robert Duvall.
Robert Duvall, yeah. Charlie, don't surf!
And was his female roommate a famous person? Because she kind of looks like Sissy Spacek in my memory.
I think, yeah, she was an established actress as well. I just don't remember her name. I haven't seen that in 20 years.
I saw the enhanced version, and just like the original Star Wars, the added CGI elements, they just don't fit.
I'm still upset about, Han shooting second in the enhanced Star Wars.
Yeah. They address that.
Just,
they sort of mock it in the in Solo. The film they put out.
I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah. You shot first. Of course, I shot first.
Yeah. I just. Yeah. The CGI was not ready. I mean, I understand they wanted to re-release the 25th anniversary, and they didn't have a master. I don't know if you heard that story, but the movie was so successful they didn't bother remastering before they had fatally damaged the master from making so many copies.
There was a long project devoted to creating the despecialized version of Star Trek or Star Wars.
Oh,
yeah, some Uber fan who was disgusted with all the changes that Lucas had made to it said, he searched here high and low and found all the pieces that he needed to reconstruct the original the way it looked on screen when you saw it in 1977.
Wow. I was one of them. I will say, I don't know of any other franchise where, Dad took me to the movies in 77 and then 40 years later we saw The Last Jedi.
Let's not talk about that. That's a sore spot for me.
We saw it. It was in 3D.
Was it? No.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I did not have the opportunity to see it in 3D, and that's A-okay. I wish I hadn't seen it at all. And I did not see...
It was not it was not a Joseph... Who's the guy who wrote The Golden Bough?
Thinking of Joseph Campbell?
Yeah, it was not. It did not fit the Joseph Campbell archetype.
No. And, you might notice, at no time did we get to see the original trio, or, quartet, if you include Chewbacca, reunited. And that was deliberate. It was to
really?
Yeah. Oh, The Last Jedi was just an absolute fuck you to George Lucas from Kathleen Kennedy and Rian Johnson.
Oh.
They wanted to make sure that there was, that the original heroes were denigrated and relegated to, stupid supporting roles, and that they were ineffectual at every turn, and that Rey, the Kathleen Kennedy stand-in, was, never needed any training because she was the best ever at everything the first time she tried anything. So she could have no arc because she could never fail. She could have no early defeat, to come, to motivate her to train harder and get better and come back and then defeat, she just won every fight from the beginning. Every challenge she met without any, any flaw, any misstep. Yeah.
That's very not Joseph Campbell.
No. And then, then they really had to rub Luke Skywalker's face in the shit to make him out to be just, not just ineffectual, but a boob. And like a crazy hobo. It's like, okay. And then, completely abandon all of the character traits that, define the character in the original trilogy.
Yeah, I have to say, given Skywalker's backstory that they presented, I didn't mind that too much, the crazy hobo part.
I did.
Yeah.
Well, and I also
Yeah,
know the backstory behind, what went into those decisions.
Okay, I didn't know that at all. It's like, yeah, when you're sitting there trying to reconstruct it, it's like, okay, what happened here? Why did they do this? I didn't dwell on it. I mean, that's yeah. Because I never really liked Luke Skywalker. If you watch the original ones, he's kind of a whiny. That's really what he is.
He was in the first one. That's kind of his character arc.
Absolutely, yeah.
It was part of his character arc, though. And that's straight out of Joseph Campbell, too. I mean, you've got the call to adventure, and then the hero has to refuse the call.
Right.
So, I can't go anywhere. I have to help my uncle. And then, okay, well, the universe will step in and kick it up a notch. Now your aunt and uncle are charred skeletons, and you got nothing. So now you're going on the adventure, dude.
Now you have a promise of meeting your father, or you can't meet your father because he died, or he didn't die, but yeah. And then you get Han Solo, who does the parsecs crack. And if you watch the original, he did it to test to see how naive Luke Skywalker was.
I think that's being generous.
Oh no! If you look at it, it's like he looks at Obi-Wan Kenobi. It's like, I just said this, and we're going to see if this guy knows what he's talking about. And Kenobi just lets it slide. But it's very clear Han Solo was just goading him. But nobody in the tech community, I was reading Isaac Asimov's magazine, and everybody is like, parsec is a unit of distance. It's not time. It's like, guys, come on, look at the scene. Even back in 7th grade, I could see that this is what happened.
Well, but in Solo, they rationalize that because there's that maelstrom around the planet.
It was so stupid. That's what pissed me off. Yeah, and the amount of energy that the people without an organ in their body to detect sarcasm, the amount of energy they devoted to explaining the parsec conundrum, you just want to, I don't know, take away their meds.
Well, I just want to take away their control of the Star Wars IP.
Well, no, I'm talking about the fan base.
Oh.
I don't know. I've seen so many very elaborate explanations of the parsec conundrum. It's like, it doesn't require this. It was a joke. It was like the captain of the boat sending the new deckhand down to grab a bucket of wheel wash.
Or the shop teacher sending the freshman around to get a board stretcher.
Exactly. Or taking the new kid out on a snipe hunt.
I've been on a snipe hunt.
We've all been on a snipe hunt. But
alas, my kids have never been on snipe hunts.
Well, you have to get outside for that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Not going to happen, huh? Oh dear.
Oh, it's a little late. I mean, they're 16 and 20 now, so the snipe hunting phase has passed.
Right. Yeah. But yeah, if when you have to put down the screen to keep your night vision, yeah, it just.
Mm-hmm. Of all the Star Wars films to come out since Lucas sold it to Disney, the only one I've actually liked was Rogue One.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, I hated The Force Awakens, hated The Last Jedi, and by then I was smart enough, I didn't go see The Rise of Skywalker. But with Solo, I mean, I understand the criticism of nobody asked for this, and nobody needs an explanation as to why his last name is Solo. That's just not necessary. I get it.
Right.
It's not necessary. And the guy they got to play him just doesn't seem like Han Solo. There was no time when I thought, oh, this is a younger version of the Harrison Ford character.
Correct.
But I didn't mind that film.
It bored me. I think I fell asleep.
It inspired no loathing in me like the others did.
It was all popcorn. It was all, let's set this up for a video game. and that was yeah, like you said, it was inoffensive, but it wasn't even engaging.
Right.
But yeah, Rogue One, with the one exception of Carrie Fisher falling down the uncanny valley on the big screen.
That didn't quite work.
Oh, that was jarring. That was, ooh.
So
if you saw it on the big screen, it was even worse.
I saw it on the big screen. So fortunately, she's only there for one line. I liked what they did with Peter Cushing. I was
that worked
for me.
I don't know why Carrie Fisher's fell so flat.
Well, Peter Cushing's an old dude. He's got lots of wrinkles and lines in his face, and it's easier to draw a recognizable portrait of an older person than it is of a young person because they don't have much going on in their face in terms of detail. So,
well, it wasn't that. What was that was the splotches of rendering shifting about on her face. I mean, they never did an extreme close-up of Peter Cushing. That was probably what saved it. But she filled the screen with her face at the end, and they just did not have the rendering up to snuff.
Of course, since then, fans have, on zero budget, have done much better versions.
Yes, they've gotten much better machinery now and much better software. This is true.
But, I've read some criticisms of that film that I agree with. The character basically makes no choices ever. She's just compelled by circumstance at every turn in the script. But she doesn't have to develop. She's, as disposable as everyone else. Yeah, because she's going to die at the end anyway. So, but
the only thing that survives is her.
Well, the Diego Luna character, Cassian Andor, he had an arc. He grew, but she didn't.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, if I remember correctly, so he survived?
No. Nobody survived.
Just had an arc.
No, it was definitely a wild bunch sort of thing. Everybody dies.
Yeah. Except for Daddy's blueprints. That's all that survives.
Mm-hmm.
No, I was fine with that. I mean, it really... you watch the original Star Wars, and here's the robot with some silly plans. Like, okay, whatever, and but to know the fight, it's like, okay, we now know this is important. We now know how many people gave their lives for that little bit of robot food,
and just how they died.
That's right. And seeing Darth Vader do something other than just pose and do a little kendo, seeing him just go through and use the fucking force on the crowd, like, oh shit.
That was the very definition of fan service, and I loved it.
Yes, love that part. It's like, okay, this guy's a badass. All right.
And it also kind of explains why his armor was all scuffed up and looked bad in the very first scene of A New Hope.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, he just killed about 20 guys.
This was all backstory, but he'd just been through or he just put a bunch of people through the ringer, so hasn't had time to take it to the cleaners.
Now, Forrest Whitaker's performance in that film was inexplicably bad. I don't know what was going on there.
Yeah, that character didn't do anything for me. It's just kind of looking at. I mean, he was great in like the Color of Money.
I didn't see that.
Wasn't that the Tom Cruise, Paul Newman?
Yeah, sequel to The Hustlers.
Yeah.
But I never saw
plays it. Okay. I thought he was really good. In fact, that was one of the first things I saw him in. And I don't know if you saw his Idi Amin with James McAvoy.
What was that? The Last Scotsman or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
I did not.
Yeah, I think he got the Oscar for that.
I'm afraid he's forever tied to The Crying Game in my head.
Oh, when he's laughing and holding the cricket ball up. Yes. Well, at least he went into that knowing what was there. as opposed to the what's his name? The Irish guy.
Was it Gabriel Byrne? No.
No. The guy who was in The Crying Game.
Who was that? Colin Farrell?
No. Oh no.
Who was in that?
He played a very minor vampire in Interview with the Vampire. He's that director has done a lot of things with him. The guy who did The Crying Game. I'm one of those completists. It's like, oh, I like this movie. Let's watch all of that director.
Huh. Everybody's so old now. I just looked up the cast. What was the name of the main character? Because we've got Dill, Fergus, Jody, Jude, Cole, McGuire, Dave, Devereaux, Bertie, Sweeney, Tommy.
Just read their names. I'll be able to pick it out, I'm sure.
Jay Davidson?
Nope.
Stephen Ray.
Stephen Ray.
Okay.
That's it.
He's so old now I can't even link him up to the character in The Crying Game.
But it has been 30 years, yeah.
The weird thing was
more than that. Wow.
the character that Forrest Whitaker was playing, Saw Gerrera, he was a character in the from Star Wars: The Clone Wars, the animated show.
Okay.
And I didn't like the character in that show, and I love that show. It's
Maybe that's why he was angry.
of all the characters you're going to bring into your big screen production from that series, this guy, really? But I understand why. He was an extremist, even when in his youth. The character was.
Yeah. Have you gotten into the Expanse?
Yeah, I've seen all of The Expanse. I like it.
Okay. I think I'm just on the fourth season.
That's the first one that Amazon did after it got canceled on Sci-Fi. That's my least favorite of the bunch, actually.
This is the one where they go through the wormholes?
Yeah.
And go to the planet?
Yeah, it wasn't bad, but from my perspective, it was the least good.
I'm enjoying Bern Gorman, who plays the security guy from the entity that's going to kick the Belters off the planet.
Oh. I think there was a lot of marijuana consumed in the fourth season. Let's see. That's the actor's name or that's the character's name?
No, it's the actor, Bern Gorman.
And that's Byrne?
Yeah. He was one of the main characters in Torchwood. And,
oh yeah. Okay, I remember the character now.
Yeah, he played one of the guys in Pacific Rim.
A very pretty film and too dumb for me to really. I couldn't cross the threshold into that one.
Well, here I'll give a little bit of. Let me anonymize a little bit. My neighbor. Oh yeah, Bern. There you go. I see it now on the screen. Yes. My neighbor was working with the director of Pacific Rim to do
at the Mountains of Madness.
I've something like that, but he did Pacific Rim instead.
Right. Del Toro, he bailed on At the Mountains of Madness because he thought Ridley Scott had stolen all his thunder with Prometheus.
What?
Yeah.
What thunder?
The location, I guess. I don't know. It didn't make sense to me when I read it. I was like, what? No.
The only similarity is you're going into a big old thing.
Yep.
And there are monsters.
Yep.
That's half the movies in the world.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Well, maybe my neighbor will get some much needed screenwriting or something like that after Del Toro finally sees Prometheus.
Well, he's seen it. I don't know what.
I doubt it.
No, he has.
Thought it was a thunder stealer.
So, and then he went and wasted years doing pre-production on The Hobbit. He was going to direct The Hobbit.
Oh, dear.
Yeah, he moved to New Zealand to be with Peter Jackson and work at Weta. And
what happened? Did Peter just decide to do it himself?
No, Peter Jackson didn't want to do it.
Hobbit?
Yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I mean, you can tell watching it. He was totally burnt out and just sort of winging it. And
huh.
yeah, no,
I know they they brought in so much as a Silmarillion that it was hardly The Hobbit at all.
Right, and the appendices. A lot of stuff from the appendices.
Yeah, oh, well, I've seen them in the bookstores in the collector section, but that was a joke in Mystery Science Theater. Some characters up there doing a stupid, lengthy expository, and one of the characters says, "My God, Tolkien couldn't follow this plot."
Well, the appendices are at the end of Return of the King. So if you have the Lord of the Rings on your shelf, you have access to all that material. But I think a lot of people just don't read it. I didn't.
I don't. I read it in 7th grade, and I remember just about everything. But no, I probably didn't get into the appendices. No, he also wrote a whole bunch of supporting material for his world building that got published in separate volumes. That's completely out of print and forgotten by all but the most hardcore fans.
Wow.
And there's a really good book, if you're into Tolkien, and I have a sneaking suspicion you might be. It's called Author of the Century. And in England, some time ago, they had asked the public who was the most influential author of the last 100 years. And all of the literary critics were aghast when Tolkien was nominated.
Huh. Of course.
They're right. Absolutely right. So this author goes through The Hobbit, The Lord of the Rings, and some of the supporting material, kind of giving a critique, a reading of the... For example, one of my favorite elements, he was very careful to describe Bilbo Baggins. He was comfortable, but not too comfortable. There's a very specific reading that us here in America, without social strata, don't get.
Mm-hmm.
And his point was to try and point out that Bilbo Baggins was a burgher, a landowner. Well, along comes Gandalf and the dwarves, and he goes off on an adventure to become a burglar.
Ah, clever. Yeah, that went right over my head.
Yeah. Let me tell you, there's a lot in that book to love. I think I have it. I'm going to set down the microphone and see if I can find the author. It's just behind me in my shelf.
What layer did I draw that on?
No, I moved all the nonfiction upstairs. Never mind.
Oh, this is driving me nuts.
There it is. Tom Shippey.
Who is Tom Shippey?
Tom Shippey, the author of J.R.R. Tolkien, Author of the Century.
There it is. All right. I think I can delete that whole layer. No, I cannot. Shoot.
Undo.
Actually, what I'm doing is just turning off layers, trying to find which one these errant lines are on.
Right. What's the provenance of that line?
I'm not sure. Don't know
Wow.
when I put it down and don't know what I was trying to do, but it's not in the right place. So I'm going to get rid of it and then reconstruct it as necessary, if necessary.
How many layers does this program allow?
I don't know. More than I've ever used.
Dude, I haven't found out yet. That sounds like a total stoner question, doesn't it?
You know,
Like,
this
if you
this
had a
program was
program-
created by and for professional Japanese cartoonists who are just, you know, fastidious as hell. So
Yeah,
you can really get lost in it.
which is why you need somebody to talk to.
Well, if
I
I wasn't
understand.
if
yeah.
I wasn't doing a live stream while I was doing this, I would be listening to audiobooks or podcasts. But since I am doing a live stream, I can't do those things.
Right. Yeah, you have these random slugs in there.
Where is this? Let's see. No. Yes. Get rid of that junk.
Wow.
So what did you find in your book? Or what did you go to the book to find?
Oh, I went to the bookshelf to look for the title of that book, and then I realized I'm sitting at a computer.
There's this thing called Google.
That's how I am. That's how married I am to the printed page.
Well, good for you.
Yeah, I just went to renew Listen Liberal, and turns out somebody's waiting for it, so I have to finish my notes and turn it in, which is ticking me off because I still have a lot of notes, which is why I'm here, because I'm procrastinating.
Mm. So what's the takeaway from Listen Liberal?
So far, it's the history of the neoliberal movement.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really glad I learned that, yes, the hippies screwed things up again.
Again, yeah.
Again. It's like, how many times are they going to do this?
How many years they have left? Let's see.
Well, that's true, too. Are they going to get us back from the grave or anything?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man.
Well, I have no doubt that the boomers will strike from the grave. No question.
Yeah. I'm just so upset that, you know, what we saw back when we were growing up watching reruns of All in the Family was real.
With Meathead? And,
yeah, the generation gap, the wars between the young and the old. I mean, they were willing to cut loose the working class in order, just because the working class didn't think that the Vietnam War was necessarily a bad idea. And just because, you could actually raise a family on a working class job back then. It's like, well, we don't want that. We want innovators that will go through and destroy those jobs. And there was even an advisor to Jimmy Carter who says, I hope that the unions die. They should die.
They did.
Well,
mission accomplished.
It was not just the Republicans that did it to them.
Oh, well, yeah. No, I've long since stopped drinking the Democrat Kool-Aid, for sure.
Well, Democrat, I don't mind. Bernie Sanders was a Democrat. Well, when he was not a socialist, I guess.
No,
but
he's not a Democrat.
But the whole Big Tent concept kind of goes out the window when the neoliberals have the fix in for their guy or their girl.
I think Bernie spent most of his life or most of his political career as an independent. He didn't join the Democrats until he ran, for the nomination of their party.
Exactly, yeah. He did an Upton Sinclair. Sinclair did the same thing in 1934 when he ran for governor. And everybody wrote him off because, he was he was probably one of the more famous authors in the country, if not the world. When he ran for governor, it was big news, but, all the rich said, oh, this is going to be a joke. And then he got more votes for nomination than all of the other candidates combined, and they freaked out.
So how'd they keep him out of office?
Oh, the misinformation campaign against him is the stuff of legends. There's a book called Campaign of the Century that I would recommend. the lengths that they went to tar him as completely unelectable are just amazing. We're talking millions of dollars in 1934 dollars just to keep him out of office. He had come up with an idea called EPIC. Well, it became EPIC. He called it the End Poverty in California.
Can't have that.
Yeah, exactly. He wrote this book it was a futuristic view called I, Governor, and How I Ended Poverty in California. And that was just after he registered as a Democrat. And then he got the nomination, and they read this book, and they went, oh, this is not happening. We will do everything in our power to kill this guy politically,
Whatever
if not
it
literally.
takes.
Literally, if need be.
Yeah. You know, that's kind of the bright side of what Obama world did to Sanders, in the 2020 electoral cycle. At least Sanders didn't have to be assassinated.
Yeah, that's a plus.
I would be bummed out.
No, I don't think they would have assassinated him. I think he would have been a martyr at that point.
You think they would have let him
I think they would have
secure the nomination?
Well, no, I think they would have moved heaven and earth to prevent him from winning, but I think assassination, I mean, look what happened to the memory of JFK and other people that were assassinated, and everyone thinks JFK was a liberal. Like, no. Look at what he actually did. No. So once you assassinate somebody, they're not there to confirm their foibles and faults.
Yeah, but they also can't enact their policy agenda.
That's true, but I guess it would all depend on how much money was behind not enacting those policies. I
mean, they were already openly floating trial balloons for it doesn't matter who has the most electoral votes going into the convention. The electoral votes don't count. They were already on that, saying that in public. So they might not have had to kill him. But I think if he somehow, if there was some backroom maneuvering where he did get, he did get all the electoral votes and he did get the nomination as well, that he would not have survived to take office.
Right, but I don't think the assassination would have been one of overt ballistics. He's old enough that there's a lot of bad things could happen.
Yeah.
But no, just reading Listen Liberal, and it puts in just stark contrast what the neoliberals were all about. And, now I'm kicking myself. What the... This stuff was available, but you had to dig for it back in the 90s. And I was busy driving boats and dating and doing things like that.
You had a life.
I didn't want to get into politics.
Right. Oh no, I was a total Clinton believer when I was living in Seattle in the late 90s.
Yep, me too. I think I have a napkin from the Sultan of Brunei that I got from the APEC meeting room on Blake Island.
Wow.
It was weird. They had the APEC meeting, and it was a big deal to get out there. And they had their meeting, and then they went back. And the next day, and when they went back, everyone left. So the next day we took some guys out, and there had been a windstorm the night before. And they had this enormous tent for the press, and they from all over the world. And they had all this other stuff, but everybody, once the VIPs were off, everybody left. So we're wandering through the lodge. We knew that very well. We took people out there all the time. We're wandering through the hall, and there's a Chihuly sculpture sitting on the centerpiece of the table, and here's the seating arrangements. Somebody got the list of the seating arrangements. I grabbed a napkin with the seal of the President of the United States that had been used by the Sultan of Brunei. It's like, that's a good souvenir. It was just, we couldn't believe how much stuff was just left. I mean, we're talking huge television sets and editing equipment in the tent that had gotten knocked over in the storm.
Wow.
But, by the time the meeting ended, everybody wanted to go home. So, we'll get it later. And then a storm hit. And we went out, and it was the only good day. And the three of us of the crew were just wandering around.
What island was that on?
Blake Island. It's between Vashon and Bainbridge. It's a state park.
I may have been there. Let's see. I went when my dad was visiting Seattle. We went to some event where it was you had to take a ferry to get there, and it was all you could eat salmon and sort of phony baloney, Native American dances on stage and such.
Oh, those were genuine native dances.
Oh, okay. Well, the presentation seemed pretty staged and plastic.
Yeah, well, they'd done it for how many? Yeah, those guys are pretty burned out sometimes, especially if you did it late in the season. Yeah, that's called Tillicum Village. That was
oh yeah, yep, that rings a bell.
Put out there by a guy. I don't want to remember his name. He was kind of an old crank. He set it up in '63 when the World's Fair came along, and then the World's Fair came along, and everyone went to the World's Fair, and nobody went to anything else. So the boat I started driving back in '89 was bought by the guy who ran the ferry service out there, and he had to sell it because nobody took his cruises, which he was offering to all the fairgoers, and it became a different boat, and it did that and this, and then it got rebought by the company. But yeah, the guy out on Blake Island, he started Tillicum Village and managed to hang on to it. And you can, up in the upper right, upper left, you can see the Tillicum Village Lodge.
Oh, okay, yep. There it is. Cultural village on a marine park island.
Yep.
Yep.
Oh, it was great. We'd take people there, and then we'd have an hour or so to kill. We'd walk around the island, get some salmon, hang out.
All right. Seattle. Good times.
Yep. Hey, keep that up. Keep the actually it's probably lagged, but that map there.
Mm-hmm.
Fun story. You know where Bremerton is, right?
Yes.
Okay, so you can see Fort Ward on that map. So the aircraft carrier Nimitz was coming out of Bremerton one night, and I had just crossed from Seattle. I drove around Blake Island and going by Manchester, going the backside of Blake Island. And then I'm like, okay, I call into the traffic control system. And way down at Three Tree Point, there was a freighter coming up north from Tacoma, and it was doing 14. So, I wasn't going to cross and managed to cut it off. So I had to go behind him. And the Nimitz was coming out from Bremerton, and it had to go around to Bowie, which is in the dead center of that map. Well, the Nimitz was doing a dead crawl, cutting off the lanes, while the freighter, Wangsi Hai, was moving 14 knots north. And the Nimitz decided to go radio silent. So everyone is calling the Nimitz, dude, you're about to cut off a freighter. Dude, you're about to cut off a freighter. The problem was the Nimitz is so long that you can see Alki Point there, and just between Alki and that point in Bremerton is the buoy that the Nimitz has to go around. And it is almost long enough to block the entire channel. So the Wangsi Hai slowed down as much as he could, and had just as he cleared Alki, he diverted to avoid collision. I was behind the Wangsi Hai in the boat. My deckhead and I couldn't believe this. We're going to watch a freighter hit an aircraft carrier. And then they lit up all four props as soon as they cleared that buoy, and they booked, and they can go 40 knots in the sound top speed. And the radio traffic was so amusing. I wish I had had a video camera to watch the whole thing, because that captain, he got in some trouble later.
Alrighty, where are we? All right. So what do you see on screen right now?
You are now pulling the map of Puget Sound North. You got your cursor on Bainbridge Island.
Okay. How about now?
You're past Bainbridge Island. We're up to Peninsula. There's the bridge across.
Right.
Yeah.
So that bridge is a drawbridge.
Yes, the floating bridge. Yeah.
And on multiple occasions, often driving home late at night, I'm super tired. A traffic jam starts, way down south here on 3, because the nuclear submarines go through here, and they close the bridge to let the subs go through.
No, they open the bridge to let the subs go through.
Well, they close it to vehicular traffic. Yes, they open it to the subs.
Yep.
So
yeah,
I had to stop and wait for that many times, and for a lot of people, seeing those big nuclear subs is a big thrill. So they're getting out of their cars and they're really excited, and I'm like, oh fuck, again.
Yep.
Because I lived up here in Port Ludlow.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, and as soon as they clear the bridge, the pilot gets off just past the bridge onto a boat, and he gives the traditional way to say goodbye to the captain, which is, "May your surfaces equal your dives."
Okay.
And then then as soon as the pilot is off the ship, they dive, and on the way out, they practice targeting on ferries.
Really?
Yep. They do everything but arm the warheads.
Well, you got to practice.
Got to practice.
Someday they might have to take out a real ferry.
Tridents are pretty cool. I'm sorry?
Someday they might have to take out a real ferry.
No, they dropped the don't ask, don't tell.
Alrighty. Well,
back on the ducks, I used to. Oh,
no, go ahead. No, I was going to say I'm going to wrap it up, but go ahead. One more story.
Okay. One more story. Yeah, back in the ducks, get all the people on board, and you got this World War II truck, and they have a CD where they can play audio of a truck that can't start. Ha ha ha. So I get everybody to clap their hands, but don't think of ferries. This was an army truck.
I'm not getting it.
Oh, this was back in the don't ask, don't tell days.
Right, but it was the same in all the branches, right?
Right, exactly. But we're on a converted army truck, and I'm having people clap their hands so that the engine actually starts. You have to believe in the duck. You have to believe in the duck, but don't think of ferries. This is an army truck.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Fairies as in magical creatures that can do marvelous things in addition to being...
Exactly.
Gotcha.
That's the clap the hands. That's from Peter Pan.
Ah. In a very long time since I've seen Peter Pan.
When Tinkerbell gets sick and she starts to fade, you have to clap your hands, clap your hands.
As I say,
that's
been a
the
long
cultural
time.
reference. Anyway, I mixed cultural references there. Yeah. I did it a lot. Oh. Alrighty. Well, I'll let you, I don't know, go get some weed.
No, I'm staying off it for a while.
All right.
No, actually, I got to go get rid of some coffee, actually. It's that's my urgency.
Yes, the rental only lasts so long. Okay, good to talk to you, man. I'll take it easy.
Take care, Jim.